Okay, so for our Horticulture Research and Safety Committee, we're currently pitching ideas for new projects. Our new member, Rigel Hope, has some ideas around transplant lists. And I imagine we would probably be privy to do some projects along with product safety testing, pending the passage of 3460. And of course, we're open to projects pitched by the program there. My chair report. I spoke with Mary Lynn Mathry from Patients at a Time, and looks like their next conference will be in Portland in May 2014, and previously the Oregon Health Division at the time, their conference was in Portland in 2002. Grant Higginson, the administrator and state health officer at the time, did some presentations. So after our reports, I'm going to propose that the ACMIT advise the Oregon Health Authority to provide some significant levels of support for their conference, whether it be hosting a luncheon to discuss state programs, some funding as a sponsor, or other appropriate means. So I'll probably be pitching that later. Yes.
In regard to that, in 2002, the group that was going to handle the continuing education credits dropped out at the last minute, and Grant stepped in and secured that for us. And also, Albie Music is on the board of Patients at a Time, and I'm on the advisory board.
So very good. Yeah, and so it'll be the Naturopathic School of Medicine is going to be the hosting institution, which is great.
I don't think that's confirmed. Is it confirmed?
It's I guess there does need to be some board approval on that, but Mary Lynn gave me the confidence that I can go ahead and announce that it will be in Portland, and that the Naturopathic School will be the hosting agency, or the hosting institution. There's some nursing CMEs that still needs to be established for that. So anyway, also the bulk of my chair report is around the fee proposal, and I'll try to submit, keep that brief. Everyone's received the actual proposal that our ACMM work group on the fee proposal came up with. And somehow it was just, aside from very clear communication about what our proposal was, they seemed to view it as two proposals, keeping the current fees as they interpreted as one of our two proposals. But in fact, we did present one proposal, and I did two tables here that I put on the handout of what the Ways and Means is likely to end up with, and they're likely to end up not reducing the regular fee and creating if two reduced fees that we currently have isn't confusing enough, they want three reduced fees. So $60 for SNAP, $50 for Oregon Health Plan, and $30 for SSI. So I think they would really benefit to hear some input from the OHA about how easy or lack thereof that those three low-income fees would be. Our proposal, of course, meant bundling it into one reduced fee of $30. They are proposing keeping the gross site fee, which was probably the most one of the most problematic aspects of the current fee. Some input directly from the OHA would certainly benefit that. We know how fast things can happen in the Ways and Means Committee. So anyway, so I will then propose, perhaps it's a good time to do it, make a motion to propose that the ACMM advise the Oregon Health Authority to make a strong show of support for the Patients Out of Time Conference. That would be the 8th National Clinical Conference on Cannabis Therapeutics, with strong show of support for sponsorship, hosting of events, and other resources.
Second.
So the motion was seconded. Any discussion on that?
I was just going to add one question or
Sure.
thing earlier, and that was, I don't know who would be responsible for this or how it would get done, but since this conference is capable of giving out CMEs and credits to those that are in need of them, that it seems like the Oregon Health Authority would want to let everybody know that could be in that position that it's a possibility to increase for the advance in learning cannabis therapeutics through the professional level. Anybody in schooling or who needs these credits should know that it's happening, and it's a way they can pick up on their standards.
I have a question. I'm part of a body that's a certain position. Can you just fill me in just briefly for a couple steps behind us? In this consideration, was there any discussion, is it even appropriate in this committee to discuss broadening the categories? We see a lot of patients who have very low income don't fall into categories and struggle with high fees. Can these categories be broadened for the low fee qualification? SSI, not SSD, for example, things like this, people on Medicare.
Sure. Actually, we're discussing the proposal to support the conference right now.
Apology.
But yes,
Apology.
we're just limited the discussion to that for now. Any other discussion on the support of the conference? Yes.
I would like to see it up on the website in case we haven't included that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so including a web presence in addition to other sources of other resources to provide.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Great. So Sandy and well, actually, technically Ben for the outreach committee reports.
I think I've delegated this to Sandy as we were talking about it.
All right.
Well, we've had a little issues with our outreach committee. First of all, it's been pretty hard to move forward on anything with everything that's going on. I mean, even getting an address that says something like OMMP and isn't a page and a half long is going to take forever to get done. So we kind of moved away from the purpose of the advisory committee when we delved into the issues of the calls and that kind of thing. Not the advisory committee, the outreach committee. And I was the person who originally said we needed an outreach committee, and Help Foreman was the first chair, and have kind of just been working along. It's a lot of work though. It's a lot of work. We're working with people all over. But I think the outreach committee is so important because it's about educating, period. Doctors, law enforcement, and patients. And we do have the handbook, and the handbook is really good, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't in the handbook that patients need to know. And so I have always felt this is an extremely important thing. And we worked for a long time to get a PowerPoint presentation together, and I have looked at it, it is extremely outdated. The only problem with the PowerPoint presentation is after we spent all the time making it, and all the time making the CDs and sending them out to everybody, nobody ever used it. And anytime you want to make any kind of change, we have to go through all this stuff over here, and it takes forever. And at the last meeting, I offered as an individual to put together the presentation we have, add the latest numbers and everything, and just put it out there to anybody that wanted to use it, right? And not as part of the ACMM. And the reason I feel this strongly is I am not willing to do a whole bunch of work to have it never be used. Okay, but if anybody really wants to use it, I would be happy to update the thing we have, and it really wouldn't take very long as soon as we have the fees and everything that's current, which we don't have right now even to do it. So I haven't given up on making that PowerPoint available, but quite honestly, there aren't many people that want to see it. On the other hand, we have a lot of people who are interested in being educated. Unfortunately, when we invite the doctors, for example, in our community or any other community generally, to come to a presentation, I don't want to run into anybody else at that kind of thing. I run into that over, one at a time. Hospice, one at a time. They will not come together as a group. One at a time they want to learn. But Alice just told me in her community, we have a lot of doctors who sign for their program. But they don't even know to tell the patient what they do about getting medicine, or 100 other little aspects that they don't know. So I end up with people coming to me who had their doctor sign, and they have absolutely no idea how the program works. They don't know they're supposed to raise their own. They don't know anything about it. The other issue I run into regularly is people who work for the doctors and the doctors' offices that don't quite understand what Cheryl and I know. How you deal with all these little aspects of a very complicated and very dangerous program. It's complicated because of all the levels of the funding and everything you have to have just to get together in the 60 days and 90 days. That's all complicated. But the dangerous part is when you don't know that 1 inch will turn you from a legal patient to a Class A felon.
That's right.
And that's what's missing. And, you know, getting that out there is really, really, really hard because there aren't many people who really want access. The program has offered to the law enforcement since day one. How many have ever come?
None.
Yeah. So that's the answer. So the outreach committee, as far as I'm concerned, at this point, the way we can be most effective is to make sure that that cover letter, which we'll get to, which hasn't moved since last time, is totally inadequate. Does not tell people what the law is, where to cut copies of the law, what the website is. It doesn't say anything. The cover letter right now is almost detrimental to the patient because it's so inadequate. And that's what you get. If a doctor signs for you, you get your IDs in the mail and this little cover letter that doesn't say anything, doesn't tell you where to go or even how to get information. So I think that the outreach committee, and of course I solicit your advice, should focus on the application forms, the cover letters, all these things that are going out now. Just get them all together and make sure they're good and work within that form. And then we get that under control because it's really static right now. Then we can think of other projects. But right now I think we've gone backwards. We really have gone backwards in what the patient used to have access to and what they have access now. So Ben wanted to be chair of the outreach committee, but it's turned out that that's not his thing. And so I don't know if somebody else is dying to be chair of that committee. If not, I would be willing to be chair of the committee with Ben as a co-chair, if you like that idea. Mostly we work on the internet because we live all over the place. We need to renominate and vote on the chair, and we need to nominate by name the people who are on the outreach committee. So given that, I sent out a message to everybody that was on the committee and said, do you want to be on the committee anymore? And some of them said they just didn't really have time. Dr. Cohen would really like to help, but he just really can't right now, but he'll help us any way we can. So I heard back from Jennifer Alexander, who's not here today, but she would definitely like to be on the committee, and I would like to nominate her. I think she's a really good asset. Kristen Gustafson, who has been on the committee from the beginning, would like to also remain on there. Sarah Bennett has expressed interest in, and Ben. Did I say Lori? Did I say you? And Lori didn't respond to my email, but told me after I got here that she would like to be here. So, is this the time to nominate? Okay, I would like to nominate Lori Duckworth, Jennifer Alexander, Kristen Gustafson, Sarah Bennett, and Ben McInnes and me, I guess, I don't know how it works, to be on the outreach committee. That's the formal.
Could I ask to be on that list?
And Jim Clark. Anybody else?
Well, what happened to Chelsea?
She doesn't,
She doesn't.
no, yeah, no response. No. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion?
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of nominating that list of people to the outreach committee, or appointing those to the outreach committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, now we need to be formal about the chair and the co-chair. Is anybody else dying to be the chair? Okay. Okay, then, Ben and I have agreed we would do it if anybody wants to know.
Good job.
Okay. Would anybody like to nominate, make a motion to nominate Ben and Sandy to be co-chairs of the outreach committee?
I would nominate Sandy and Ben to be co-chairs.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Sandy and Ben to be co-chairs of the outreach committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I just wanted to throw out a suggestion I thought of when Sandy was talking, and that is, why not take the letter you sent out to Juana to the clinics with the handbook and send it to all the doctors that have ever signed, and let them know that they could get copies of the book. That would go a little ways towards educating, because I get the same thing Sandy was talking about. People come in, oh, my doctor signed and he sent me over here, and now what do I do? And they have no clue.
I've been looking at it, it's a newsletter too.
Uh-huh.
That's a good way to get out.
That would be really good.
So,
How would it get out?
hmm?
How would it get out?
A newsletter, I'll share with you guys, and you guys help get it out. But, yeah, we discuss
Yeah,
it.
you could do
privately,
an e-news or something
because
like
when
that.
things change, that's where the problem happens. The change, and everyone doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
You know, just like when the window closure, you know, it's like we contact you guys, we need to find a way to reach out to everyone with stuff that's changing within the program.
Yeah, and it's always changing.
Right, and it's just like the forms, we still see some forms that were back in the beginning that, you know, some copied and they still use that.
Well, yeah.
And it's like, how do you get that out there?
So so now we're on the agenda item of OMMP cover letter. Are we done with your report?
Yeah,
or-
it didn't happen.
Okay.
That's
I
the
think
reason.
about that cover letter, I know if you bring it up, but it's the database. We have to, right now, we can't modify that cover letter, and I wish I would have reviewed it before that we put it into the system and got this answer. So we have to get the developers to do it, and what we're trying to get is remove all our letters from Crystal Reports, so that, am I saying it backwards? It's right from Crystal Reports, or is it the?
It's something called SharePoint. Well, basically the bottom line is we want to be able to have it so that we can control it, we can edit it, and it's not currently. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done with the database. There's other little issues that just keep coming up, or we need other things that weren't put in the first release that we have prioritized, and it unfortunately keeps slipping down a little because we have one developer helping us. But it is on the top of our minds. It's just, unfortunately, just keeps slipping back week after week.
And every time something changes and we start something, it messes with something else, so.
It's just so important that the people understand that there's a little bit of rules that go with that card they just got in the mail.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
people who come through clinics like ours and Cheryl's, they get educated while they're there, but people who do go to their doctors have no clue.
Yes, and we
My
understand, 'cause we
doctor
get the
actually-
phone calls around those things, and we try to help them.
My doctor has people call me, because,
Mhm.
you know, you know, it is a problem.
Yeah, yeah. I bet those 4,000 calls will go down too. It is, that's what we're trying to get at, trying to find ways to make it easier on all the stakeholders. I'm sorry, Todd, I just took charge, didn't I?
No, all good.
Because she was talking about it, I just wanted
Sure.
to share that.
Any more discussion on this? Or? No? Okay. All right, so we satisfied with that agenda item then? Okay. Good. Our next item is this federal agency access to the OMMP registry.
Well, before we get into that entertaining subject, I wanted to take a moment to talk about another issue. As the board knows, I sent a letter to Dr. Goldberg, as I said I would, regarding the relationship between administrative rules and the statutes that create them, called organic statutes, and how the administrative rules designed to bring in new qualifying conditions are really designed to eliminate qualifying conditions, and therefore are the antithetical or antithesis of the purpose of the statute that created the rules. The reason I'm bringing all this up is twofold. One, I understand from communications that Dr. Goldberg is going to give this to Shannon. In that regard, I would welcome any email or other discussion between myself, Dr. Goldberg, and Shannon O'Fallon to address this issue, which leads me to the number 2 point about all this is, isn't it a shame? I mean, really, isn't it a shame, and I speak through you, not to you, that you guys, not you, the ones behind you, that you guys had to make us go to the legislature to put PTSD on the, as a qualifying condition, use up their time, their valuable time, which they didn't really need to have to do if you guys, not you, people behind you, would have written the rules like they're supposed to be written to support the organic statutes that created them. What a waste of time. What a shameful, shameful act you guys did. And it's about time you corrected this, because that's beyond shame. It's beyond shame. Go to the legislature and have them consider this, because you can't do your jobs. It's terrible. It's shameful. Next subject. Here's the next circus of shame. Again, as you know, it's not you guys, it's the people behind you. Federal agencies are now in the business of stealing packages. Yes, I said that word. What they do is they get a package that's coming in or out of Oregon, Post Office, Federal Express. The two big places so far are Medford, which we happen to be in, Portland, but they're not exclusive. And they just go through these packages in mass numbers, and they compare addresses to the private information in the database. So you get a postal inspector who says, I think this package is suspicious. Would you, Mr. Law Enforcement person who works for the state of Oregon or some county within the state of Oregon, would you look it up to see if it's a medical marijuana address? They look it up, it's a medical marijuana address. Okay, we'll take this package. We just seize it. It's now ours. And they go to the medical marijuana person. They say, here's the receipt for your package, we're taking your money. Now that also is against the law. Because as you know, the statute and later on a case called Held versus Sheriff Hanlon, held, if you will, that that information is private and may only be accessed by law enforcement to the benefit of the person who owns that privacy interest, which is to say the medical marijuana participant. It's only supposed to be used by law enforcement to prevent an unnecessary arrest. This guy's got some marijuana, is he legal? Yeah, okay, we want to arrest him. It's only designed for law enforcement to use it so then they get a report of marijuana growing in a house. They don't do an unnecessary search warrant, an unnecessary breakdown of a door, stealing of children, and then find out, oh my God, they're legal. It's only, and that's the law. It's the law in the statute, and it's the law in this case held. Now, when I brought this up long ago, of course, a former Attorney General was completely happy with the fact that law enforcement was using it against the patients and had no intention of correcting this problem and operating within the law. Now it's gotten worse because of these packages in the last couple of years. They're taking their property because they are medical marijuana participants, cardholder patient or grower. It's got to stop. It's shameful again that you're letting these people be subject to these sort of, taking of property. Now, there's a way that this can be prevented, but unless you're willing to do it, and again, I'm not talking to you, but unless you guys are willing to say, look, there's got to be some method that we can track who's asking this information, so that if they're asking it for reasons that are against the law, they can be denied access to this information again. That's the only way to protect the people who are in this program. Because you guys were unwilling to do that before, this program from the feds through the state has blossomed. Because federal forfeiture laws are kind of weird. Once they take your money, it's up to you to prove it's legal. That's a very difficult thing to do. And they know this. And the federal forfeiture statutes are extremely complex. You're going to need to hire a lawyer. I mean, you'll get lost in them in a minute. So then, the whole cost of trying to get your property back, even if it was innocently taken, is so huge that most of the people who come to see me don't hire. It's not worth it. It's just, a cost-benefit analysis, because it's just too expensive. And, and I got to go through all this process and have the feds look at me and all this. So I get most of my people who are under this don't hire. Some of them do. And that's how I know all of this. And these guys now feel confident that they can break the law, and you guys won't do anything about it. This is a form of self-loathing that really needs to stop. You guys need to start liking the people you represent, rather than loathing them. That's what the law is for. You're supposed to protect us, and I'm not about me, but you're supposed to protect the people who are in your program. That's your job. And now you're not doing your job. And what can we do to make you do your job? I don't know the answer to that question. But somewhere, somebody has to come be held accountable for not doing your job. And it may be some fancy lawyer who says, well, I can sue the OMMP for violation of these people's privacy. Who knows? Something, somehow, somewhere, you guys can get held accountable for breaking the law and violating the rights of the people you're supposed to be representing. I can go on, as you can well imagine, but I think you get the gist of it. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. And it's a really, really sad. And all of these people never get charged with anything, by the way. Nobody that's come to me who's had their monies taken from these packages has ever been charged with a crime. You're a medical marijuana card holder, we're taking your money. That's it. Boom. How do we stop this? How do we stop this? Can someone come next time and tell me how we can stop this? Can someone from the Attorney General's office please come and tell me how we can stop this? Who's going to be held accountable for facilitating this taking of people's money just because they happen to be in the medical marijuana problem? And I don't overstate this. I've seen the affidavits. I've deposed the people who are taking the money. Medical marijuana address, that's the clincher. If you want documentation, it's all public record. In fact, an AP reporter out of Medford interviewed me for an article a while ago, almost a year, I think, because he was doing an article on the Medford area's huge numbers of people whose money has been taken because they're medical marijuana card holders. It's a very well-searched article because all this is available online now because the federal government's now all online. So anyone can go look at these affidavits and look at these forfeiture complaints, the number of which has gone whoosh, just skyrocketed in the last couple of years. Because they got the idea that, hey, they're not going to stop us from accessing this information. why don't we just find out if they're a medical marijuana card holder, take their stuff? And that's why it's blossomed this way, because they've learned from you guys, not you, that you're not gonna stop them. They've done what they're told by you guys to do, which is, go ahead, access the thing and use it against them, we don't care. So that's my wrap, and that's all I have to say about it. I'm certainly open to questions.
Could I add to this?
Sure.
Okay. So is the question then, is there a way to track why the inquiry is occurring, such as possession, delivery, DUI? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Is like, why are they accessing this information? So is there, we ask you if there's a way to track that, or do they need to enter, excuse me, some sort of a code in order to, gain that access? And then the second part is that if their inquiry does not fall within the confines of the law, like to the benefit of that patient, can the lead system, OMMP, deny that access? Is that?
That's kind of where I think you need to go in terms of the most simplest way, is to identify the particular officer. Because then lawyers like myself can say, okay, he looked for that information, and this is how he used that information. And if he used it to the detriment of a card holder, he or she no longer gets access. I mean, that's the very least and simplest with the least moving parts that you guys can do to get them to back off of this illegal activity. That's how I see it anyway. Everything else has a lot of moving parts, it's very complicated. Now you'll find out, I'm sure law enforcement will say no, and law enforcement runs everything these days. But at some point, even law enforcement has to follow the law. At some point, somewhere, I think. We hope.
Not down here. Not down here. Not down here. Not at all.
Can I get quick feedback? Because I met you, Jennifer, but we haven't really talked. And you're the law enforcement liaison, right?
I am.
Can I get your opinion?
My
Yeah, your feedback on this.
I'm the lead law enforcement.
Yeah.
You're the lead. And so here's the thing, well, and I gotta ask you the basic question. At the
Aaron
most
is the one
rudimental
that
level,
attends
we talked
court.
about, there's law enforcement liaisons, there's law enforcement this, I haven't yet heard a patient liaison, a grower liaison.
Well, I suppose
A caregiver
by
liaison.
de facto, that's what we are.
What?
I mean, by de facto, that's what we are. That's what we spend the bulk of our time talking to is card holders.
Yes.
I know, what's
What do we
funny,
s-
don't we find that funny? Don't you find that funny that you're the head law enforcement liaison?
I mean,
You're
I
a
understand,
law
I
enforcement
understand that
liaison.
the term law enforcement liaison is loaded and it has connotations. There's nothing nefarious about the term.
Well, no,
We're not-
it is
we're
nefarious.
not
We just defined
defining-
there's nefarious actions taking place.
I would have to caution between an attorney's opinion on someone breaking the law and the actual facts of person by. As a judge, what I mean is, no judge has informed us this law enforcement officer is inappropriately using leads, cut them off. You're asking us to make a decision based on an argument, not on a conviction, not on any evidence that a person has done this. Our role is simply to verify. Our statute tells us if a law enforcement officer can demonstrate he's local or state law enforcement, he gives us the proper credentials, gives us a name or an address, we're going to verify whether the person's a card holder.
Well, let me ask you, do you think it's being abused? Do you think this isn't being abused?
Brian makes a compelling case that it is, but I
I'm
think on
asking
the
you
other
personally
side,
as an individual.
I don't have an opinion on
He's
that.
not-
No way.
we're not
Sorry,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
say
Yeah,
no
you're right.
opinion.
I would just say,
That's
Yeah.
not
we
what
wouldn't
the
know
statute
other
says.
than what, we're hearing
The
here.
statute in the case is very clear. They are only allowed to access it because it's private for the benefit of the patient. And if the statutory language is ambiguous, the case said very clearly, that's what it is. Again, I'm not blaming you
No, I
guys.
understand.
Believe me, I'm not
What I'm trying
blaming
to
you
make is
guys.
there's nothing in the statute that authorizes, gives us the ability or authority to ask, why are you asking this question?
Right.
That's not correct.
Question,
That's very incorrect.
That's the advice we've been, I mean,
Now,
if we
I
get different
agree. I
advice.
agree that's the advice you've got. But the statute limits the reason for the access.
That I agree, but it doesn't give us
So
the
then it
authority
gives you
to
the
ask
authority to
why.
enforce
Well,
that.
I'm gonna suggest, because we can't move off of this today, but I think you have the right idea. We'll get Shannon in here, and, you can have a discussion with someone who's actually a lawyer. And,
I just wanted to make a record that, I know these guys.
I hear you,
decisions.
I hear you. No,
These guys do great work,
Yeah.
they know I'm not talking about them.
Yeah, there's just, there's just a lane that we're in running the program, and I get that somebody out here is doing something with the information. I get that part. And then the question is, do we have any, do we have a lever there somehow? And,
Yeah.
and the answer is, I don't know. But, Shannon can tell us if we did, so.
Technologically speaking, we can limit an ORI from being able to access that. And I don't believe that even Shannon would be opposed to that if we had clear indication that person was abusing that. But I just want to caution that I don't know that this is enough for her to say cut this ORI off based on.
And we've had some
Right.
cut off. If it was someone that shouldn't have been having access to it, we can do that by contacting the law enforcement security person.
We have Andrew with his hand up, and then Laird, and then I.
Just briefly, it's good to know whether that lever to close the door of access exists, but I think the point that I see as valuable is transparency of the request, so that there's accountability in abuse later that can be tracked. And do you have the ability to put on the light for the request so that that can be transparent and accountable later?
We'll find out.
Larry, in your words that you don't have a clear line of authority to make a rejection or ban some officer from accessing the list, the implication there is that it's time for us to get back to the legislature next year.
Could be.
I suggest if we could explain this to Senator Bozansky, he might have significant interest in following this up, because cops that do bad are one of his least favorite things. So,
Well, I'd say
I
first
suggest we
let's
build
find
a-
out what we can do on our own. And that will tell us what needs to fall to the legislature.
okay.
But well, the answer would be to draft an administrative order.
Right, I'm sorry, this is my question. Can't administrative rules
Yeah,
exist?
I mean, and the question is whether or not you, and I don't mean you, whether or not the agency has the will to do that.
Don't know.
I know. That's why I'm saying it's not you guys I'm talking to. I didn't mean to be redundant each time I said it. But I know you guys don't have any decision in any of this. But it's going to be the Attorney General ultimately who's going to allow you to, or disallow you, or prevent you from passing the appropriate administrative laws. And this is my only forum to talk to those people, and that's why I did it.
We'll get them here.
Yeah, I mean, in my reading of the statutes, I mean, most of the Medical Marijuana Act is about, regulating the patient and the grower and your responsibility of evaluating applications and stuff. And then there's, the amount of wordage is very short, but it does clarify to some degree how, under what circumstances law enforcement can access and can share that information. So even though it's just a couple paragraphs compared to a few pages, I think that the importance of the registry program to regulate that law enforcement access is just as important as it is to regulate the growers and the patients and such. And just a suggestion, maybe the changing the name of the law enforcement liaison to something
about that in the
around
lunch.
compliance. Just
Right.
around
I
compliance.
was writing that in here, I was writing that down just as you were talking about looking to changing that name, and that's a working title. There's classification, there's working titles, and before I was here to reclassify those positions to handle those law enforcement calls as well as the agency line, which addresses all stakeholders. That was the name that was given to make a reclass, but before my time, that doesn't mean I can't go back and revisit that, and I was writing that down just now. It's absolutely correct,
Good.
and that
Right.
can be done.
So any more compelling comments or discussion about this
I just
topic?
wanted to real quick, just apologize. I didn't mean you directly as well. I just got a little heated because I guess the only thing I beg is what I want you to hear is that I beg for you guys to stick your necks out in a way that you maybe haven't done or that I don't know about. But my request is to stick your necks out. That's my request, because I think you have the people on your side now where that may have not been. And I'm actually just begging that you go above and beyond the job descriptions. That's really what I'm asking, and know that I know you guys are doing your best, and I know that you guys aren't the people of the info. But I also know you guys have a massive influence in the ability of what you can say or do to those people above.
Good, so we have one more agenda item before we get to public comments. Can I set someone bring me up the public comment sign-up list so I know how much time to allot? One question about this.
No, something a little different like this. Can
Okay.
you do that right now?
Sure.
Okay, we as a committee have voted 2 different times that we would write a report, this kind of report, that would tell us how much the fees would need to be charged to cover the costs.
Right.
Without having an extreme excess. We made that motion, it's passed unanimously twice. We still have not gotten that information. Now, I'll tell you why I asked for that information. I want somebody who's running the numbers to tell us how much we need to charge to break even.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super easy. So the next thing we'll be doing as a center is we'll be projecting the expenditures for next biennium. Because, we have to live within our budget. So we'll know. We'll know, what is the program, what do the programs cost in the next biennium, and we have, I think, a revenue projection already. So we'll be able to tell what that is.
And that's
Okay,
a
well-
post-legislative session analysis then? So after the legislature does?
Oh, after we're done,
Yeah.
yeah, because basically we take the legislatively approved budget, we project out all of our programs, and, so that we know, revenue versus projected expenditures.
So what
is
we're
the-
asking for is direction.
Yeah.
We have already asked very effectively, or not effectively, that the prices be reduced. We know what we're fighting here. But if we can have a figure that says this is what patients should be charged, and not come up with $3.72 million, or whatever it is,
Well,
752.
Well, and there is a fee reduction in the works.
But
You guys
not-
were successful.
It's
Slightly.
not really a reduction.
Well, whatever it is,
It's
it is what
bad.
it is. It is what it is, and we'll be able, we'll be doing that with all of our
But
programs, not
obviously,
just medical.
we're charging way too much money when we have this much money sitting
Well,
here that I am sure that the legislature is gonna steal it. It's either gonna go DHA, OHA, or general fund. We've had it happen before. And for them to do, that after we're already taking all this extra money and then ask this extra money and take it to, that is so wrong.
It's
I'm
kind
sorry,
of
I'm
legal
over.
theft.
Welcome.
But we
welcome
still
to
haven't
the
got
world
this
of the
report.
legislature.
I got
Okay.
it.
Truthfully, the legislature controls the purse string. That's absolutely true.
While the legislature does get to set those fees,
Yes, they do.
we can show how much
Oh,
they're
yeah.
stealing from us.
And you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah, we have some influence, and,
Just by
but,
providing
there we go.
facts, I
So,
believe.
so anyway, but we'll see how it's gonna look. I mean, it'll be
Okay.
very transparent, it's a projection we'll do long about, the books actually don't close until August, September, and, shortly thereafter, we'll be able to, really peg it to the next money.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
And I did just want to make one more quick comment about that. The likely fee scenario from Ways and Means, talked to Representative Buckley about, and it was before Senate Bill 281 passed, so it's not considering the addition of PTSD and the increased enrollment from that, and it's not considering the passage of 3460. So he said that in the short session next year, if there's need to make an adjustment based on those two occurrences, that he's going to push for making that happen.
And that's almost exactly the right time to do that. It'll be partway
Good.
into the biennium. Yeah.
Good. All right, so we have 5 people on the public comment, so we can discuss the legislative stuff. I'll say till 10 after 2, and then we'll start public comment. So that gives us a little less than 15 minutes to talk about the legislative bills affecting the OMMP. We already know that Senate Bill 281 has passed and been signed by the governor.
Thank Ed.
Good. Yeah, and and before I go, I also just wanted to thank David for facilitating our data report that we requested for the fee proposal, and for Jeff Carlson, who would be great to see at this meeting one of these days. But
We'll drag him in September. How's that?
great, yeah, it'll be in the same building he's in, so that'd be great. And for Carla Orcutt to do a lot of the statistical analysis and punching some of the numbers that we needed. For Cheryl, who helped with a lot of the editing of the proposal and drafting, and the other work group members, Kristen Gustafson, Ware was on there. Who am I forgetting? Anyway, I put it on my report. But anyway, just there are some people who to be thanked for that fee proposal work. Yeah, Cliff Spencer, good.
And Todd mainly, he put a lot of time into drafting. Thank you.
And for Representative Buckley for being receptive to it.
And Senator Boquist.
And Senator Boquist for the PTSD bill, for sponsoring it and bringing along some Republican votes on there, and for Mitch Greenwick for helping. There are a lot of people to be thanked this session, and so anyway, and we walked into a different legislature than we've had. I mean, a lot of the same people, but the attitude was clearly different this time. We're totally unaccustomed to getting what we want in that building. So.
Yeah, it's called strike while the iron is
And in this room particularly, Anthony Taylor has been. He's also a constituent of Senator Boquist, and I believe you are too.
No,
almost.
I have Senator Robles.
You're close out there, so a lot of people to be thanked. Anthony, do you want to help us out with the summary of the bills that are active and?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Just going off this list, of course, you mentioned 281 already, and David referred to 3460, so it's pretty much you're up to speed on those two bills. Senate Bill 40 passed through the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Public Safety on Wednesday, I think it was, and will come before the full committee probably next week, and that's the restructuring of the fines and penalties as a result of the rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. And we expect, we're optimistic about that bill clearing the full committee and getting a vote on the floor and being adopted. Senate Bill 82 was just passed by the House with the be engrossed, which means it had an amendment in the House. Now it'll go back to the Senate to be voted on. Excuse me, to be voted on again. And since it passed the House once, and we've added a provision that addresses the court's ability to deal with minors when it comes to this particular provision, which is an exemption for driver's license suspension under the controlled substance statutes. We feel confident that it'll pass there and go to the governor's desk. Senate Bill 94 is going to still be in committee upon adjournment. There just wasn't enough votes to get that, so we can take that to the next session if we need to. That would dealt with reciprocity and also the requirement to designate a grower on your application. So those kind of went by the wayside for lack of votes. It's very, I mean, people understand the reciprocity, but the part about deleting the requirement to register a grow site was kind of not so much complicated as hard to explain, I guess, is for lack of a better phrase. But so it's going to be in committee upon adjournment. And then House Bill 3371 will also be in committee upon adjournment. There is some talk that that may be the platform for a joint resolution next session for a referral out to the ballot, but that's still very nebulous and in its infancy. I will also add here to this list House Bill 3194, which combined with 3195 and 2204 in the beginning, the Governor's Public Safety Commission bill is still being hashed out, and there is some agreement on some items, but because of that agreement, there is now some opposition from quarters that weren't originally in opposition, so they're still hammering that one out. And the reason I mention that is because it affects the sentencing guidelines and the sentencing grid under which marijuana convictions are they're sentenced under those. So we'll have to wait and see. They've been playing it very close to the vest, so only those that are in the room really know what's going on. But it has had some struggles. I think that I would like to reemphasize what the chairman said about the possibility of readjusting the fees again in the short session in 2014, and I think that with the evidence that will be available then, there will be some movement on that. So that's about it in a nutshell. I would like to thank everybody, excuse me, for the help on getting 281 through. I couldn't have done that without everybody here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So this will be our last opportunity during this legislative session to advise the legislature on measures that affect the OMMP. So it's coming to the end of the session, but if we might want to put in a little bit of advice while we still can. My main concerns are around the fee structure and 3460. Those seem to be the two things that are left that we can, have any influence on. So I'm particularly concerned, administratively around the three-tiered low-income fees. Does the staff have any input that would help us on that for how having a three-tiered?
I'm going to suggest this thing may already be done. I mean, it passed out of the Ways and Means Subcommittee, and it's on the full committee, so I don't know. I mean, this is more detailed than I've seen on any of the fee stuff, so, but, I don't know exactly what's in there, but, or whether it's this or something like it. But we do know they passed it out of the subcommittee with the notation of the fee reduction, whatever it was. So it should become clear at some point here.
Yes, sure.
Oh, I just have a comment. You might want to readjust your budget for staffing if this three-tiered thing goes through, because I know the clinics are going to be hammered with questions.
Yeah.
And you guys will too, because we have so many patients that are sick and confused, and they have a hard, well, as you know now, to want to have it redone the form.
4,000 or 5,000 phone calls a month.
Yeah, and it's going to be more because you're going to have 3
We
levels.
have got to somehow get this program to a point where we don't get 5,000 calls a month. And that's
Well,
what
that's
I'd
just
like
what
to see.
you guys get. Our clinics
Oh,
are
yeah, you guys
fielding
are
we
so
don't
many,
log ours,
so many
right?
of them ourselves, and then
So,
that's what you guys do.
Complexity does not help.
Yeah.
Brian and then Ben.
I just want to say I have historically been the lone voice on what I'm about to say, but I think history may have proven that there may be something more to it. I think it's a wonderful, darn thing for the legislature to see us as money. I think it's a wonderful thing that they pull a couple of $1 million out of us and they say, hey, let's keep that program going. And I think that at least in part, this is why things are a little easier this session. They see us as money in hard times, and they say, hey, maybe, our prejudice is wrong. Maybe Maybe we can get bought out by these people if they give us enough money. And so I think a lot of the resistance has gone down because they see us as a money source in these hard times. I've been consistently the lone voice to express this. I know people have low-income needs and they need to be helped, but I think at some point we have to recognize that there is a benefit for the legislature to receive profit from marijuana, and that this can be seen on a much larger scale as the years go on. And that's all I have to say.
Ben?
And I just had a very simple suggestion to solve a lot of the phone calls. I don't know if it's optimal, but I know that you guys aren't allowed to use the database at all, but you can have an opt-in in your application to where they opt in to receive information from you. I could do a listserv. Exactly. Yeah. Why not have an opt-in listserv? Because, you know,
that way we're not sending stuff to people we shouldn't be doing that, probably, right? But yeah, you could sign up.
Just an opt-in. And that you could do is literally just a web-based thing, and then have it on the application, check a box, opt in, you're good to go.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And then it saves a lot.
Yeah.
Good. Anthony, do you have?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make one more comment. I think maybe it's time, given what I've seen in the legislature this session, for the committee and the administrators to get together and put together a very thorough proposal for both rules changes and a legislative packet to really get a handle on some of this stuff and just, you know, buckle down, do the work, get it before the legislature, even in the next short session, but at least by the 2015 session, so that a lot of these questions that we have and understand, we can apply a solution to it. And I think that this is the time to do it. And I would encourage the committee and the administrators to pursue that avenue of thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it might be appropriate for us to have reinvigorate we used to have a legislative committee, subcommittee on the OMMP, or on the ACMM, and so if anybody is interested in taking the leadership on that, you know, it would be a good committee for us to reignite. So, okay.
It pays good too.
Yeah. But in light of that, and also in light of what you know, Brian's consideration, I think on a couple points on the fee structure that we could probably all agree on, that let's say I'll make a motion that the ACMM advise the legislature on the fee proposal that to have a single-tiered low-income fee because of the problems it would create for staff, patients, and support groups.
Second that.
Yes. And then the other point of the fee structure, to eliminate the gross site fee for the reasons.
And I would only offer that at this point it's likely to be a February 2014 issue. Because odds are this is done. Yeah, at this point. So.
Okay, so we'll do those both together. We have a motion, we have a second.
What was the motion?
Motion to advise the legislature on the fee structure to have a single-tiered low-income fee and to eliminate the grow site fee. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Yeah, exactly. Do we have any advice on 3460? I know we probably haven't seen the amendments yet,
I think at this point it's probably out of our hands, because if it's in the Ways and Means going where it's going, it's not going to be there this time next week.
Yeah.
It's going to be done.
Exactly. So, So, do we have anything to say about 3460 to the legislature?
No.
Keep
Go
going.
for it.
Keep going.
Don't stop
Keep
now.
moving.
yes.
Should we tell them to keep going?
Well, it can't wait. It really can't wait. I went 17 months without access when I entered into the program, and that's not okay for anybody, and I know it still happens because Sandy already described the scenario under which, how that happens, because people go into their doctors, they get their recommendation, they get nothing else. Like me, it was like, where do I go? You know, I had a career then, I didn't know anybody, I wasn't a consumer at that point. So I had no access, zero, legal or not. This can't wait, just like Senate Bill 281 can't wait, couldn't wait, period.
I don't think it's gonna wait.
All right, well, we better not wait on this motion, so I move that the HMM advise the legislature that passage of a safe access bill, of the safe access bill, House Bill 3460, is an urgency to accomplish this
For
session.
2013.
Yes. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Good. And I'll send those letters out on Monday, if they hadn't finished it by then. But, good, so this will conclude our regular business, and we will now open it up to our public comment session. And LV Musica is number 1 on the list, and Lori Duckworth is on deck. And you could take 3 minutes or so.
I would like to thank my state of Oregon. It is my home and has been for 8 years now. I have worked with you people way back, with Sandy Fairbanks back in '93, which was embarrassing.
1991.
91.
Wow.
Gosh, we really do go
92.
long. Way back then. Anyway, we have been working on this, and you guys have come up with some very compassionate laws. I have been involved, as most of you know, in a federal program that supplies me medical marijuana. Sometimes, and sometimes they send hemp. Hemp is very nice to wear. It doesn't do a thing for my glaucoma. I have had problems with them from day one. Not really. The first few years, I actually got by with this 4% marijuana and 1 eye drop instead of 2 or 3 or 20 of them. I have problems. They usually work for me for 1 or 2 years, 3 at the most, and then I got to find another drop when another drop is required. When I have access to excellent Oregonian or Northwestern marijuana, I don't need those drops.
Yay.
Okay, the problem was that sometimes I got my medicine on time and sometimes not. Sometimes it came what it was supposed to be, and then they started sending garbage not fit for a dog. My doctor called NIDA to find out why they were sending me this. And they said it was he says, why can't you send her what we were sending her before, which was 6%, supposedly their best. And their answer was, this is a mistake that will not be repeated. I took that to mean an activism has a price with the feds. In 11, that post office that opens those packages decided to keep my supply. And I usually carry a 6-month supply back from Florida and complement it with the Oregon marijuana for the rest of the year by using some of the marijuana when it really is marijuana during the day, and then the indica at night when I need it most for other, like sleeping issues and so on. Last year, several things happened that really ended my search to keep my site, which has been a fight I've been involved with for 38 years. 37 and a half of those years, my site not only was maintained, but went from 2,400 in my left eye to 2,160 while I lived in California. That is nothing short of a miracle. There's nothing you can do to give me that kind of sight. We tried it with my better eye when all this began for me, and I believed marijuana was a dangerous drug. And the results was I lost the eye completely after 10 years of total hell, a court battle, and everything happened. I won that, became this recipient. Last year, contrary to the suggestions we made at the meeting the summer before that, I don't even know why you had us meet at this room to discuss it, since it was already made up that those fees were going to go the way they went. I stated that if you did that, there would be several of us who would have to drop out and would have no choice about it, because we don't have the money. I also pointed out what that would really mean. I would like for all of you to really, or one of you, whoever does the analysis, get into and find out how many more opiates you have been buying from the health department for your patients in Oregon since you raised the height. I know that you got plenty more new people, but I am sure many of us dropped out. I know many of my friends are now taking drugs they were free from for years. For me, it was worse than that. I thought I could get away with not paying you that fee last year because I couldn't afford it. I send you statements showing that all I get is $712 a month and my rent is $675. Where do you think I'm going to find $150 for you? I don't have it. That's why I'm on food stamps. That's why this state pays for my Medicare part of the bill. Nevertheless, I was told, no, you're not compliant. Okay, my doctor panicked because between the garbage, so at the same time the government, the stuff I was going to double up with, turned out to be hemp, 2%. I'm sorry I'm running over, but this is really urgent. So the 2% hemp I took and doubled, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. Next thing I knew, I started losing my optic nerve at the very top of my eye, and I had not done that ever. I have maintained that eye out of the surgeon's hands for 37 and a half years at that point. That prompted my doctor to do a very minor surgery. He forgot that nothing's ever simple when it comes to my eyes. And put a little tube there that has resolved many people's issues, including, I'm not fluctuating, that the marijuana, it's all the medicine I need now, and I don't need drops. Except now I'm on a steroid because guess what? That led to a detached retina, which led to a hell that you can't even imagine, several surgeries, all kinds of crazy stuff. Bottom line is you didn't get $150 from me, but you sure are paying the bills, which last time I looked were over $20,000 and counting. Because that little tube now is messing my cornea, which probably need to be replaced, and I'm scared to death. Because every time I've had one surgery in the right eye and now in the left, I have always come out with less sight. I couldn't afford to lose any sight. I hope you enjoy the greediness and the fact that the patients are helping you all pay for all the misgivings of your budget. We were already above then. I'm proud and happy to help you with your other problems. There is no excuse for this kind of abuse upon us, and I'm really sorry to come on. If I sound angry, I am. I used to have $2,200 a year ago when I came to see you. Now I have $2,300, which means I don't see the walk and don't walk sign. Means I'm playing Russian roulette by trying to be independent. And I'm not happy about it. And I don't know what I can do about it, but the fees have got to go. Oh, this year you're going to get them. My patients who helped me get the marijuana are having to pay for my fees too. I don't want to be a beggar. I don't deserve this kind of treatment. I'm sorry. Neither does any other patient that's in my situation.
Thank you, Ellie. Lori is up, and Jeremy Sackett is on deck.
Wow. I'm Lori Duckworth. This is my community. I live here in Jackson County. And a lot of you from around the state know me. I've been an activist for 5 years. A lot of you are my friends. Many of you are my friends. Many of you here are my friends. A lot of you have seen my face in the paper. And I'm proud my face was in the paper, but not for what it was for. My question was to the committee, to OHA. My question was, where does all the money go that the OMMP generates, but LV answered it. It goes to pay for surgeries, and it goes to pay for the downhill effect. Where can the public access that information?
I think we handed it out last time, didn't we?
Where can just anybody that comes into Southern Oregon Normal at the Cannabis Community Center and ask me that question, when they say to me, Lori, where does the $7.2 million that was generated between October 1st of 2011 and June 1st of 2012, where did that money go? Where can I tell them to go online and look?
Well, like I said, we handed it out last time.
But where can I tell them?
If it's not rhetorical, I'll share that information
Sure.
with you.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I would love that, because I can't tell them that. I can't tell them, go online and look here. So
Okay.
Aaron, I would
Oh,
love
yeah.
to
Sure.
tell them that.
Yeah, I think we listed the programs and the amounts.
Okay, great. I would love to have that information, Aaron, to post at my community center. Now I can tell you, as conditions of my release from jail, I've been barred from using my cannabis. I suffer from a seizure disorder, and so I've had to go back on full strength of my pharmaceuticals, which has left me completely cloudy in my mind, and which has left my quality of life not as what it was, as many of my friends here know. I was sharp, I was energetic, and I rocked it for my community that I love so much. I didn't depend on anybody but myself to carry the full burden of the weight for my family and my community. I was the matriarch. Since then, I've had to pass that torch off to my daughter. And I can tell you that that sucks. Cannabis has changed my life. It's saved my husband's life. It saved the lives of many, many, many people in Oregon. And you guys know that. You've heard patients. You've heard families. And you all know that are my friends. So, like Ben asked you, we're begging you to stick your necks out. We're begging you to be our advocates. We're begging you to be our protectors. My husband was one of the first 500 cardholders, and I've been part of this program since the beginning. And that's all we have left, is to beg you. Beg you for fairness, that we are no longer discriminated against, and that law enforcement stops abusing the LEDS program, because I guarantee you that's what they've done down here in Southern Oregon.
Yeah.
They're vigilantes down here. I have lived down here almost 25 years. Thank you very much.
So Jeremy Sackett with PK on deck.
I just wanted to say thank you to the committee members and the staff here for all the work that you've done in the service. It's really appreciated from your community members, and I'm happy to learn more about what you all have been doing and continue up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. PK with Randy Rodriguez on deck.
All right, thank you. I'm a survivor from a motorcycle accident 36 years ago. I'm a cannabis user, I'm a grower, I'm a patient. I'm trying to get this information out to other people so they can see what's going down. And to get them to get in touch with their congressman to get these laws straight. The fees that you ask for are too ridiculous for the poor person. And then to find medicine for the poor person that doesn't know how to grow. or would have to go to the black market. Thank you for your help. Please do well.
And PK, thank you for bringing our meetings to Salem, what cable access and YouTube and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Brandy.
I'll stand over.
This question is to the health authority and board, to everybody in this room. In the last 3 years, Southern Oregon has seen about 10 paramilitary style raids. And I use that word because my brother was taken by gunpoint naked from his own bed. On OMMP gardens by law enforcement officers that leave hundreds of patients without medicine, and they're forced to submit change request fees and additional fees to the state if they're lucky enough to find a new grower for the season. Being as that the state has cashed in on approximately $55,000 alone in the last 3 years from the associated fees, my question stems, and I'm glad that you guys have brought it up about the grower fee. Can there be a fee structure set up for the patients who have become victims of the profiling and the targeting of these Southern Oregon gardens, which Sheriff Winters has himself proclaimed nationally on Weed Country on Discovery Channel? Those patients like myself that were affected by rape, can we have a reduced fee schedule for Josephine and Jackson County, since we are the two counties that get the majority of all the raids in the state of Oregon? Can we propose something to us that live on food stamps and taking out student loans to get a real career with a college degree? Can there be a proposal for a reduced fee for raid patients, or the elimination of the grower fee? Thank you.
So so that concludes the public comment, and you know, for those of you who aren't ACMM members, we do have two subcommittees. One is Horticulture Research and Safety Committee, and the other is the Outreach Committee, which does education. So if you're interested in participating, you know, just let us know. Our contact is on the website, and you don't need to be an ACMM member to join on our subcommittees. So, with no further business, we adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. This is Murphy
If I ever trust yes. I mean, for 38 years, I thought it had been average. They're green and
I would like to welcome our two new members, but we have one member here, Dr. Andrew Dorfman. Thank you for showing up. We usually go around and do some introductions first, so we can start with Ben and go away around the room.
My name is Ben McInnes, and I'm a patient with the program, grower and a caregiver. And
Cheryl Smith, I'm the Executive Director of Compassion Center in Eugene, and I've been on the committee for about a little less than a year.
I'm Laird Funk from Williams, Oregon. I'm a grower and a patient. I seem like I've been here forever.
Todd Delato, also chair of the Horticulture Research and Safety Committee from Corvallis, Oregon. And also we don't have amplification today, so we can just remember to project. An introduction.
Oh, okay, Jim McClure, I have been here forever. It's great to be here and glad to be here in my territory. I didn't have to travel so far.
I'm Andrew Dorfman. I'm a new appointee. I'm a family physician, and I live in Portland, Oregon.
I'm Sandy Burbank, Executive Director of Mothers Against Misuse and Abuse, and I'm one of the Forever group, and I'm the one who voted against the meeting here because it was 6 hours just driving. But happy to be here.
Alice Ivany, patient advocate.
I'm Jennifer Alvarez. I'm a law enforcement liaison with the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program.
Good morning, Tawana Nichols, Section Manager for the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program.
I'm Aaron Kossel. I'm a program analyst for the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program.
And I'm Dave Leland. I'm interim administrator for the Center for Health Protection, which is the organization that this program is in. Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Clark, and I'm a patient, and I'm here in support of the pen.
Alice?
Elvie Musica, and I'm here from Eugene. I have a few problems. I'd like to hear some of the solutions she might have come up with by now.
I'm Lori Duckworth, and I'm the Executive Director of Southern Oregon Normal at the Cannabis Community Center, and I'm also a member of the Outreach Committee for the ACMM.
My name's Ron Williams. I'm a patient.
My name is Michael Sockman. I'm a patient, and I've worked in the field of medical marijuana for quite a few years, and been recently working up in Washington with the Liquor Control Board on the legalization laws there.
I'm Jerry Lehrberger. I'm a practicing physician in Ashland, Oregon. I appreciate that the meeting is here today. This is lovely.
I'm Pete, PK from Mercy TV, filming this. I've been filming these meetings since a long time.
Thank you.
Keith?
I'm Keith Answer with the Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper, helping out live stream the event if I can get this to work.
And Brian Michaels is on his way, and I expect Sarah Bennett is too. We'll move forward. Does anyone have any changes to the March 11th meeting minutes? Yes. Proposed? Do you want to make a motion to accept the minutes?
Actually, there's a couple here.
Sandy.
Sorry, I had to get it up. Under, it's on page 5 under action items. Motion by Mr. McInnes to nominate Ms. Burbank as chair of the outreach committee. That was kind of the opposite way. We nominated Ben to be chair, and that was seconded, and he was made chair. So that needs to be reflected in these minutes, even though that might change again today.
So, okay, say that again under.
Okay, he nominated me.
On
to be
page
chair.
5, under
On
discussion?
page 5, right up the top, under first motion action item.
I have a different page.
I have it to page 5 too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, this is the one I printed off from.
Oh, okay, it's
Oh,
on
I have to
page
look back.
4.
It's right above the OMMP fee structure, whatever page that's on. I'll get my.
It's on page 4 for me.
Okay.
Okay, page 4,
And it's under action items.
action item. Second one says by Ms. Burbank to re-nominate everyone, or
The next one down.
Motion by Mrs. Burbank to renominate everyone already on the
The
outreach
next
committee.
one down.
Next
Okay.
one down.
so motion by Mr. McInnes to nominate Ms. Burbank.
It was the opposite
Okay,
way.
so Ms.
Okay.
Burbank to nominate Mr., okay.
That's how it was.
Anyone want to make a motion to approve minutes with changes?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Okay.
Who
All in
made that
favor?
motion? I think.
I made
Motion.
it to not, oh, this one.
I made the motion to
Okay,
accept the minutes.
Jim, okay.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor of approving these minutes with the changes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Good. And we welcome Brian Michaels.
How you doing?
Thanks for making it. We'll move on to uninterrupted administrative reports.
Okay, so, Sarah's still not here, but, so the director appointed, Dr. Andrew Dorfman and Sarah Bennett and reappointed Todd to fill the vacant positions on ACM, so welcome. Personnel update. We currently have 23 permanent employees, and we have 3 temporary employees, and we're currently recruiting for 3 positions, and we still haven't started recruiting for the management. As I said before, we're going through a reclassification. I'm looking for a structure, how OMMP will look, since we've grown so rapidly. And as well as having assistant to the section manager. I know several of y'all always talk about me having assistants, so we're looking at that. And Aaron will talk to you about the stats.
All right, well, as of yesterday, we have 54,917 patients. The number of unique caregivers, obviously not counting the same person caregiving for more than one person, is 27,678. Number of growers, 41,752. The number of applications where a patient is listing him or herself as the grower, 29,681. The number of registrations where a patient lists another person as the grower is 27,659. And then the number of physicians currently with patients on the OMMP, 1,532. And then you can also see the number of out-of-state participants of 841 patients, 353 caregivers, 347 growers.
May I ask two questions? One, can you just say what the 3 positions open are, so we know what the
Oh,
needs are?
yes, that's a good question. The 3 positions are all, mainly, we call a case processor. They're office specialists, 2 positions. They're the ones that initially put the information into the database system. The start, well, not the start, because we set the files up, open the mail, but that's the start of them being put into the system. That's the role of that position.
And you need 3 of those?
3. We started the recruitment, and we're still checking references. I have one person that has accepted the offer, so, but we haven't communicated about a start date. Then I reopened that same position for 2 more vacancies.
And Aaron, I have one question too. Do you happen to know, you may not, the percentage of physicians that have approved OMMP applications or patients versus the total census of physicians in the state of Oregon?
I don't know the total number of physicians in Oregon, but I think the Board of Medical Examiners webpage would be pretty easy to find that out. So that's my
Most
question.
recently, about 10 or 11,000 physicians in the state, so over 10%.
I have a question. Now, are the specialists too, the input, are they the people that take the information, put it into the computers?
Yes, they review the application, review to make sure that all that information is, that's required by law, and they put the information into the database system.
And was a request for 3 positions to be filled there?
Yes, there are 3 vacancies, people that resign.
Yeah, was any of that based on the future issue of now that PTSD has been added and may have an influx?
Are you, say that again? If those positions, no, those were vacancies. People resigned from those positions.
Right. So, do you believe that that will remain enough people if we start having an influx of membership because of the addition of PTSD?
No, it wouldn't increase the FTE for, we don't see it increasing FTE. We believe that that some of the patients that are already on the program may already have the conditions. We didn't see a need to recruit for another FTE.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, very good.
How about the 3 managers that you need so badly?
Maybe can I speak to that? So, we got a program with 27 or something positions and one manager, which is just, that is just not the way to do business. So we actually have a proposal that we're winding through all the processes to hire a couple of managers. So, you know, the program's kind of split in half. You know, there's the law enforcement liaison group and then the, you know, sort of the case processing group over here. So we're proposing a couple of unit managers for supervision. And so that'll give sort of the, you know, proper span of control and oversight of the program. So I'll have more to report next time. So, you know, we've got that at least moved forward internally. So it's officially in the works.
Yes, it's like it's in the works. And also, as far as assistants, they just gave me word that I can recruit for that, but I just busy. I gotta get started. I need her to do the work to get it in the system. So.
And I've been wanting to ask you more about what exactly the law enforcement liaisons are responsible for. Because I know you have, do you have two currently?
Currently.
I remember there was another law enforcement liaison, John.
Yeah, John was one that, and he take minutes. See, if I get an assistant, the assistant can take on this role because this pulls away them from doing the work they need to do and assist that team. And we have actually 9 law enforcement liaisons. So there's 9 law enforcement liaisons. They're the ones that review the application, the final review process to make sure that information is correct. Everyone is in compliance, and all the requirements are there. They also, and then they're the ones that change the status and protect them and send out the cards. They're also the ones that send out correspondence to request additional information if there's something needed. They look at the medical documentation, making sure that it's appropriate. They watch for any type of abuse or forgery. They're the main ones that answer the phone calls, and we put out 4,000 calls in a month.
Law enforcement calls?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's separate. That's just the agency.
4,000 per month.
No, not law enforcement calls. That's the total calls.
Okay.
So they answer the calls for just the agency line when patients are calling to check the status, and so we've done some things to streamline around that. The close. So since we've been caught up for months now, we're starting to see a little less calls because they can hear where we are in the process of getting the cars. But we still get a lot of questions around around the law and around how to complete the application. But they also take on the law enforcement calls too, when the law enforcement is calling to verify the patient.
Maybe I can help just really quick here, just because to give you some context. So each of the positions has a job position. There's office specialist 1, office specialist 2, administrative specialist 1, and administrative specialist 2. But each of those jobs has a working job title, and the administrative specialists 2 are known as law enforcement liaisons. So that's where that term comes from. So basically every AS2, any person hired as an administrative specialist 2, that's their working job title. That's why you hear the interchangeable terms. Just
for clarification, those 4,000 calls are not just law enforcement.
Well, that's to the
All the
agency,
calls.
not all the calls. We
I just
have
wanted
another
to make
tree,
sure.
but that's for the main agency and law enforcement.
Understand.
Yes.
Thank you.
And are you currently logging the law enforcement data registry inquiries?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I've never seen it on a LEDS report. Is there any way we can get that reported?
That's your database system now, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
We'll look into that.
we could easily get the number of calls. Breaking it down by badge number would be different because those get broken down by ORI, which is an agency level. We actually would get a badge number from a law enforcement person, but I'm sure we could, if nothing else, get an aggregate total.
And do you log it into your data system or a paper handwritten?
We no longer have to write it down. We are now technically advanced enough to log it, so it's searchable. But yeah, it's logged into our database basically.
Yeah, we would really appreciate getting that included in the LEDS report.
I'm
I'm not sure of a couple of things that you were saying, maybe in part because I'm a little old and hard of hearing and it's a little much of a distance. But I wasn't quite sure what the term law enforcement liaison means. I heard you say what they do, they take calls and other administrative procedures, but are they sort of the eyes and ears of law enforcement into the program, or can you not tell us that?
It's not as nefarious as it may sound.
Just
I
because
think
they
it's
work
So
simple.
if you do what I do, it's pretty nefarious.
Right.
Much more than it sounds.
I do understand. I mean, that, a main part of their job is to, you know, as 475331 allows verification of, by law enforcement. So a big part of their job is that's what they would do. It would be they would be the position who would take those calls, look up the information, verify the information. So as part of their job description, their working job title, it's more of a human resources thing than it is anything else. Is law enforcement liaison.
They don't report to law enforcement?
It's just simply they call us, we verify the information, provide it back to them.
So
We're not working that.
And is
I
there
don't.
a way that you could require the name of the officer when he or she is obtaining information?
Oh, we absolutely. do
Yes,
that.
we do.
Is there a way you could be on these tabs?
We'll look.
That I'm not certain. So I'll look into that.
What would prevent that if you have the name? Why couldn't you give the name?
Well, I'm not certain that we can.
I know it's not you guys, but do you know why you have to put these codes up so we don't know who it is?
So in that case, so there's two different ways to verify. The numbers that we're giving with the ORIs, those are calls through the 24/7 verification line through the law enforcement data systems. We don't have contact with that. They're able to query our database and get a yes or no response, and that's the report you're getting. Is how many inquiries were done by each agency per month. The phone calls, that's down to the officer level. We know who the officer is. We get a badge number, we get a name, we get a callback number. So we do have that information. I don't know that it can't be provided. I just think we need to run that up the chain.
And like you said, there's two systems. Our database, we capture it, that's captured on the lead side.
And there's no way we can require the name when they access the web?
We're not sure about that. We'll check
There's
into
one way
it.
of holding those who are abusing this accountable, because you can see there's, you know, a few, and then there's large numbers, and then there's a few, lots of valleys, and then there's a big hill, and then lots of valleys. And it'd be nice to know who's abusing it and who's not.
It's really more of a the way LEDS is set up in that it captures it by agency.
Right.
So like, for instance, each agency is given what's called an ORRI number. We do background checks using the LEDS system on growers. So the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program has one agency number. So you see what I mean?
So if I checked and Aaron checked, it's going to be the same, it's going to look as it's the same, from the same agency. It's not going to be able to identify that it was me versus Aaron.
All these numbers on the left-hand side of both pages for each month, they're separate agencies?
Correct.
Jurisdictions. So would it be like, I don't know, Jackson County Sheriff's Department?
Yeah,
has
it
their
could
own
be
number,
that, it could be
for example?
Medford Police Department, it could be
Or
Medford
city?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it tells you the jurisdiction. And I don't know, I'm not looking at this, but, you know, would it be helpful, because we can certainly, if we've got the code, we certainly know what the jurisdiction is, we can just print the name of the jurisdiction.
That would be good.
Would that help?
Yeah.
And as you may remember, we've had communications with LEDS about this. There's some debate from their side that that's not public information, but I'm not certain
We'll find
that's
out.
true. But
We'll find out for you.
Well, the information they're accessing is not public information. That's kind of the point.
Right.
And so if they want to access private information, they need to disclose who they are. But they're accessing private information.
I guess a point I want to make is someone at the agency would likely know which individual officer did that query, but the way the lead system's set up, we're just going to know what agency it came from. We're not parsing that out. That's just all we know through the lead system. If a person makes a phone call.
Yeah, I know it's not you guys.
Right.
I got to talk through you to whoever's
Understood.
making the decisions, because they're not here for me to talk to. I understand that, you understand that, I understand.
Okay. Gotcha. Does that work?
Also,
So you
Chair
wanna-
acknowledges that Sarah Bennett just joined our meeting. Welcome,
Here.
Sarah.
Yay, Sarah.
You want to introduce yourself?
You want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
I'm sorry?
You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sarah Bennett, patient caregiver, grower advocate, worked with Human Collective, and I'm also a consultant to the medical marijuana community. So thanks for having me here.
Welcome.
I had a quick question, yeah. For the NUCMs, could you just explain what LEDs and ORIs are? And the NUCMs are the new uninformed committee members?
The LED?
Yeah, what is LEDs?
Oh.
And ORI?
So LEDS stands for the Law Enforcement Data Systems. It's basically a program law enforcement can use to do background checks, et cetera. And one thing, when Senate Bill 1085 went through, we set up a means for them to do a 24/7 verification through, and they use the LED system to do that. ORI stands for Originating Agency Identifier. Don't know if doesn't make sense. That makes no sense as an acronym, but that is what.
And David, it would be very helpful if we could also get this report in Excel. That would help a great deal.
Oh, just electronically, you mean?
Yeah, not a PDF, but in Excel. That way we can graph it and analyze it.
Sure. Yeah,
Otherwise, we have to type this in, and that's very.
This may already be in Excel. It's just
Yeah, it's in something.
Yeah, I know the first report you issued was in Excel, and then maybe in PDF. So Excel would be highly preferable.
You saying send it to you electronically?
Yeah, that would be great. All right, did you want to do a budget review report?
Yeah, I'll give you an update on the budget. It's there. It's there. So I took it back to both the current year and the first year, and you can compare. But currently we have a cash balance of 3.7 million, and the revenue for the year is 15.1 million, and you can see that what was transferred, it's pretty in line with what was projected, and it's 6.3 million.
And that we're almost at the total revenue or paid in other programs goal?
Yes,
Pretty close.
yes.
So we've reached a new record.
I think you'll recall the total was 7 million.
Yes,
7 million. So you
Yeah.
can see we're 6.4. So right on.
Probably one or two more
seven.
payments.
There's 2 more months.
2 more months, 2 more payments.
Well, actually, there's 3 more months of transfers. You can look at that. You don't see any for April, which means they'll show up in May. You know, sometimes if it's like right at the end of the accounting month, expense will go into the following month. So, yeah.
Well, with our new record cash balance, it looks like we're good for it, huh?
Well,
any questions on budget?
So since we have some, I want to talk about travel. I think, let me look at the agenda. So since we're under the updates, administrative updates, so we can do it we can talk about travel and the clinic letters under the dialogue between the ACMM, or I can talk to you about it now. Would you want to, because I don't have it on here, but I'd like to, since we got new members, we have a new travel expense, claim expense. I thought I would review the travel claim again. So,
Sure, yeah, if you're done with your administrative reports.
So either you want to hear the public health director's transition, and then I can talk about these things under the dialogue between us and ACM, because then we can get some feedback and discuss the clinic letter that went out,
Sure,
and
yeah,
have
let's
patient
do the Public Health Division Director, and then we can move on to all the other stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Sure, thanks. Well, hey, first of all, happy to see all of you and glad to be here today. First of all, hey, a few recognitions. So Todd and I signed a little appreciation certificate for Stormy, and we'll write her a nice letter and send that off to recognize her service on the committee for all of those years. And so thanks for that, Todd. And then I want to recognize Tawana, because well, the employer recognizes years of service, and so they actually have these handsome little certificates, which I always say these handsome plastic carrying case here. So we spared no expense, but the reality is, we really appreciate Tawana's service, and she's been with State of Oregon 15 years.
16 years now.
Yeah, 15 on May 1st, 2012.
Could you come back and let me get?
Sure.
Let me come around there.
Hey, come on, we'll do, this is what's called, I learned what this is called. This is called the grip in Korean.
I have to thank you. So I was passing these out to all my employees. All my employees said, don't I get 5 years something? And so then Aaron and I both started in 2012, so we've both been in the States for 16 years now. So I passed his, I go, where's mine? So I was like, yeah. Well, way to give it to me. I thought this was really nice.
Don't you get those little gold pins anymore?
No, I like these.
You get the plastic carrying cases.
Thank you so much.
Not to mention, Tawana is the longest standing program manager.
Yes,
So,
yes,
by
thank
far,
you.
Yeah.
That is true.
Really a big deal.
Yep, it's been what, 6 or 7 years already.
So I always look for some, way to appropriately embarrass the victim. And I thought, this is the place. This is perfect, so this is great.
Perfect.
This is great. So we'll recognize her in front of everybody she works with.
I did.
So. Okay, so we're in some transition at the health division. So let's see, for those of you keeping score at home, let me sort of bring you up to date. So you'll recall from kind of our last discussion back in March, the health division did a little bit of reorganizing back a year ago, last July. And we now have 3 centers. We're organized into 3 centers. And so the center where medical marijuana is located is the Center for Health Protection. And we have 2 other centers, which are the Center for Prevention and Health Promotion, and then we have the Center for Health Practice. And so the Health Promotion Center has all the tobacco and obesity programs and all those kinds of things. Practice has things like epidemiology, disease investigations, the public health laboratory, those kinds of things. And protection, which is one we're in, has the environmental health regulatory programs like safe drinking water and radiation protection and food safety, the restaurant inspections that all the counties do. We have a tox unit, we have the medical marijuana program, and we also have a healthcare regulation program which does the hospital certificate of needs and Medicare certifications and all those kinds of things. So our protection center ranges pretty far and wide, and it's about 160 people, about a $34 million biennial budget. And of course, we're coming off the legislature right now, so as you can imagine, all of those programs generate lots of interest in the legislature, and so it's been a real active legislative season for us. So anyway, back to keeping score at home. You'll recall that back in December, the Center for Health Protection Administrator Gail Shibley left to become Chief of Staff for Mayor Charlie Hales up in Portland. And so yours truly got appointed interim during the recruitment and all that sort of thing. And where I came from was I actually managed the safe drinking water program for forever. Several of you said you've been here forever. Me too. So, on the safe drinking water side. So I'm an engineer and regulatory kind of person. And as you guessed by now, I'm still interim center administrator. So that was December. Kind of fast forward to February, and our deputy director for the health division, Gene O'Connor, left in February. And now, August 1st, Dr. Mel Cohn, who's our public health director, is departing. So we're in a little bit of leadership transition. We actually have an acting deputy director right now, Bobby Green, from Bruce Goldberg's office. He's actually, his real job is local government liaison, and so Bobby is a longtime Lane County Commissioner. Some of you may know him, and I think he was on Eugene's City Council also. Is that right? And pretty savvy. Spent a lot of time working with public health issues at the county level. So really good, I think a good fit for us during the transition period. So he's acting deputy director. But bottom line is we're moving forward. So things that we've got in the mix. We're not going to sit around and wait for a new public health director. Typically, it takes a long time to recruit a state public health director. If this happens by the end of the year, I will be very surprised. But meantime, the leadership team is moving forward. So our goal really is to tee up the organization for the new person when they arrive. And so you can expect that we will be moving forward and communicating. There'll be some communications coming out very regularly during this transition period. We'll happy to share those with you. So there's sort of a number of decision points, like, gosh, what about the job I'm in? So to be determined. The leadership team's sort of inclination is we ought to fill this job. We ought to get that. It's been advertised. We've got some applicants that think there's some good ones in the pool, and we ought to move forward with that, but that hasn't been determined, so will be soon, and so we'll let you know what's going on with that, because that's fairly close to home for you folks. The public health director job is posted, so it's out there right now. So they hurried up, Bruce's office hurried up and got that out there and all put together appropriately. So that's kind of that's the public health division update. So so there's several of us that are interim. Hey, not to worry. We've been around the barn a few times. So we are not newbies. So it's fine, not to worry. And we're gonna move forward with things. We're not waiting on stuff. So sort of, and I'll tell you sort of my personal philosophy of all this is, which actually I learned from Gail, which is run until tackled. Okay, now that might scare some people because you're wondering where I'm running, but I'm rarely running in some odd direction. Okay, so I got a pretty good view of where we're going, but we will implement things and we will move forward. So that's sort of the plan. Yes.
Where are you running and where are you moving forward to?
Well, more to come. Okay, so we got some great big things going on. Okay, particularly for the medical marijuana program. I want to get this management structure thing solved. I mean, this has gone on too long. Actually, it's gone on since the beginning of the program, I think, right? I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not telling stories out of school here, but when we reorganized back in July, this program was in another part of the health division organization. Mm-hmm. So it appears over in the new Center for Health Protection, and we're kind of used to running regulatory programs. That's what we do. You know, we have rules, we have standards, we have compliance, we have enforcement. You know, we do this stuff. And, you know, so, you know, medical marijuana is a really good fit for that, you know, as is the healthcare regulatory program, which also came to our center. And, but we were just astounded, actually, by both programs. Both programs had one manager, you know, and, you know, come on, you know. What about when she's on vacation? You know, I mean, just, that's crazy. So, anyway, so I'm a solutions person, and so we put forward, you know, this sort of, you know, yeah, that's really how all our programs are organized. There might be two, or depending on the size of the program, like drinking water actually has 40 managers, but you know, it's like 50 people, and you know, with disparate, you know, activities and things that are under that. So what's appropriate, you know, adequate supervision is what we really need to have to really kind of help this, you know, program be as good as it can be. So we're going to keep rolling on that. Yes.
How do you see us being involved in that process?
Well, you know, as soon as I find out, you know, if the proposal's going to go forward as is, or if it's going to go forward in some other occurrence, it's kind of not baked yet. It's not even half baked yet. But as soon as it's half baked, I'm going to roll it out here for you guys to look at. I think these are things you've already talked about, you know, with the organization and the program. You know, and so it's not surprising. You know, in broad terms, you know, this sort of what we wish we would call by another name, this law enforcement liaison. Maybe we could pick some better language. I was just thinking of that. You know, maybe we could think of better language for that wouldn't freak people out. But you know, this group that kind of works with the, you know, the law enforcement inquiries that come in, and then the group that's actually sort of, you know, really running the registration program and, you know, keeping that going. You know, those are logical work units. You know, and should have some supervisor over it, reporting to the program manager.
Are
Yes,
there
ma'am.
any thoughts or plans for developing standards for medical marijuana clinics or any more oversight?
Oh, absolutely. So, hey, thank you for asking. So, just yesterday, and you know, I'm sure Todd and folks here can weigh in too. 3460 got got work in the Ways and Means Subcommittee, and it's, I think it's this thing. This is the medical marijuana facilities. You know, we call them dispensaries. You know, the bill calls them, you know, facilities. You know, bland language. You know how that is. And I believe this one is on the 7th Amendment iteration by now, right? I think it's the -7 amendments. Yeah. And so I listened in actually yesterday on the Ways and Means Subcommittee, and they moved it to the full Ways and Means with the due pass recommendation.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
So yeah, so that apparently is moving along. So
Well, that's actually not responsive to my question
I'm
because
sorry.
that's a completely different issue. I'm talking about the clinics, and you may not be aware, but the clinic I run is the only one that's actually been audited by the medical marijuana program.
So who did the inspection was one of our programs, the one he spoke to earlier that moved underneath our center healthcare regulations.
Yeah.
And they did the inspection to see if you all meet the standards of meeting the attending physician.
yeah, that's a different.
That's-
That's not related to medical marijuana. It's related to being a clinic.
So we're going to be now considered with other clinics? Because, I mean, I went through this whole, like, rigmarole of trying to, you know, find out about, well, it had to do with what to do with medical records when a clinic closes.
Yeah, that would fall very clearly under Dana Sellover's shop, which is the healthcare regulation and quality improvement section. So they're the ones who are in charge of clinics.
She doesn't know that,
and
by the way.
Hmm?
She doesn't know that. She's not aware of that.
Of what?
Dana, that would fall under her bailiwick.
Well, what I just heard is that's who is.
That's who would inspect to make sure that you meet the definition
Yeah.
of it, but
Yeah,
I
okay.
think what you're looking at is some type of regulation under the
For
clinics.
clinics, standards for all clinics, not just, I asked for the audit.
Oh, okay.
For Compassion Center.
Right.
It's not something that
But
you
that's just
ombudsman.
that's just meeting the, because we don't regulate the clinics, right? So and that's not in our law, so there's nothing in line with that. But what we do is making sure that the clinic and the doctors there are meeting the definition of attending physician. So that's what Dana does, that part to inspect and make sure that you guys are meeting the definition of attending physician. So it's separate, that's, the clinics are not regulated by
Yeah, no, I understand. It's,
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, I thought we were, kind of moving over into the dispensary sort of
No, I'm
area,
talking
but,
about, what's.
Anyway, I'm glad I got a chance to mention
but
that, even if it
maybe
wasn't
that's something that
responsive,
happened
yeah.
in the facilities, because they're looking at these facilities to be some of the clinics, maybe.
And there are issues out there, I know,
Yes.
because we
Yeah.
get the fallout when
Yeah.
there are problems.
Well, Dana's shop, they oversee, birthing centers and ambulatory care. They've got a list of,
Right.
my gosh, just tremendous broad spread. So, but anyway, back to the dispensary bill, that seems to be, at least moving towards ways and means. So.
I understand the Oregon Health Authority proposed some of those amendments. Would you mind discussing what those proposed amendments are?
Haven't followed it all that closely. Our legal counsel, has, pays really close attention to these things and just makes sure that, we don't get weird stuff in there that conflicts with other statutes and all that. So, but I am aware, what I am aware of is one of the amendments, so that really was our concern, is that, if there's some legal thing that affects, that would affect the, efficient, regulation of dispensaries that we're about to be assigned to, we want to make sure that that works right. But most of the amendments are by others. So, we can track through that. I think I probably got all 7 of them. But one I know was, one area of discussion was local government. Wanted to have some sort of oversight from a planning, land use, permitting thing. And, I think they got that worked out. That, so that I know there was a bunch of back and forth with legislators and those folks about that. So anyway, so this is pretty typical with a bill. They kind of, people all get their say through all of the process, and I think some of them were yours, probably. The royal you amendments to that. So. So anyway, hey, we'll see what happens. We're getting really close to the end of session. And, so there aren't many things that are still alive, if they haven't passed. So, yeah.
First, I want to thank you for being here. You're way ahead of your predecessor, who we never even met, Gail. But I wanted to ask you, just a minute, lost my train of thought here. Embarrassing.
I'll ask something until it comes back.
Okay, go ahead.
Does the state public health officer necessarily have to be the director of public health, or can that be assigned to somebody else?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, it can work both ways, and it has in the past.
So is there also is an acting public health officer?
Yeah, it would be, actually, we need to sort that out because it has to be a physician, and we have several.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the sort of transitional things. After August 1st, somebody has to be designated as the state health officer, and that's a physician, board certified physician. We have several of them, but we will have somebody designated to be health officer for those statutory health officer responsibilities. But that said, the director doesn't need to be the health officer necessarily. And we have had, one of the best directors that I've worked for in the last 30 years actually was a nurse. And so we had a health officer, separate public health officer. So those functions were in 2 different people. And so it works either way. Mel has been in both jobs because he's a board certified physician and can be health officer and public health director.
As I recall, somebody from the program was supposed to be at all the legislative hearings that involved the OMMP in any way. And I know that Dr. Higginson was pretty much there most of the time. Is that still the situation?
We always have particular marching orders. Over time, there is less and less sort of attendance by program people. And it's kind of, and that's really legislative intent, you know. That, so the way we work this, we have a legislative liaison who tracks all of the bills and really brings people forward as needed. So like I was asked to be at some of the hearings and work sessions showing case of the program questions. So it's not, we don't just show up. You know, if we are to be there, then we will be. Yeah.
So you are there by invitation?
Yeah. Well, the agency determines who's going to be there. So.
Let's make these last two questions. I think Tawana needs to get on with the other items.
Yeah. So, but we always have it covered. We always have it covered. And you know, it might be Mel. You know, it might just be our agency legislative liaison. And if there's a program, you know, something around program, then we'll have program person there to answer the questions if needed.
Yeah, but I just want to go back to how you began speaking, Dave, about your background as an engineer. You're coming in, you know, running in specific directions, and you're running to create a management structure that helps an organization develop a high level of functioning. So all that's really important. I mean, a well-run system is really important. I just wanted to give a little bit of guidance based on my own experience interfacing with patients, that as you're doing your due diligence and consideration, that you don't just focus on the internals, but that you remember that the organization has to interface with patients who are often in the dark. It's a complex process. They just basically, from their point of view, want to get medicine. The fee structures are complicated, the phone time, the delays, the deadlines. So that as you look at your program, you remember that it can't just be a well-running organization. It has to actually function and interface with people who don't know how it operates. So I just want to guide you.
Could not agree more. And there's no reason for this program to exist other than to serve the patients.
That's
We're
right.
here to get, you know, if they're, you know, they're here to meet the requirements. They meet the requirements, they get registered. And there's no other reason for us to even be in this program. But thank you. I appreciate you saying this.
Mine's short and quick, and that is that I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you consider going from interim to
I have and I am not.
Could you be persuaded?
Well, you know, I'm sort of at like the end of my career path, as you can tell from my gray hairs. You know,
60's the new 50.
But anyway, thank you. But no, that's just not really where my interests lie. And I'll just tell you, you know, I've told people, look, it's time for the next group to step up. You know, and so where I think I can be especially helpful is to that next administrator when I'm around, because I'm going to be around for a few years anyway, you know, and I can be very helpful to that new administrator. You know, if I'm taking up space, you know, then all of a sudden, you know, I'm gone and the new person comes in. So I don't know if that sounds self-serving or not, but that's just how I feel about it. So, you know, so I've also told Bobby Green that, hey, don't worry about it. You know, I was dumb enough to sign a work out of class agreement back in December without checking for an end date. You know what I mean? Does that sound like a guy who's been here 30 years? You know, that wasn't too smart. But anyway, I kid about that a little bit. But the fact, I told him, I said, look, I'm not gonna put pressure on you. Do what you need to do for the organization. You know, I'm fine doing this for a while. And you know, my drinking water program, you know, it's 4 unit managers. Guess what they're doing? They get to be interim drinking water manager, you know, 2 months at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make sure you put rotation in there.
Yeah, they're rotating, you know,
I
and which is what I asked them, you know, what do you guys want to do? And they said, well, we would do this. I said, that's a great idea, because, you know, development of the next generation. So, yeah, so that's good. So that can go on for a while. We can do more development. Yeah, so.
Well, thank you
All right,
so
thanks.
much for the
Thank you.
update and for this could be your last meeting with us, so.
No.
No, one more. Yeah.
Todd,
Good, the longer the better.
Time will
Brian
tell.
had something to say.
Time will tell.
It's important we're just running out of time here.
Yes, and it's almost 11, and we have a guest speaker too that's supposed to be on at 11.
He had his hand up a couple times.
Well, we'll give you the floor unless
Yeah.
compelling.
What?
You want to ask something real quick?
I hope the answer won't be quick. The question's fairly short.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, are you the guy to talk to now about how we can function a method that law enforcement doesn't abuse access to the private patient's information?
Happy to hear your concerns, you know, and
Getting
we'll,
their names out would be very helpful.
Hmm?
Getting their names out
Well,
would be very helpful.
you know, we'll check into that and we'll see what our constraints are. And they may not be our constraints.
It may be on the other
It may be
side.
on the law enforcement side, but we'll find
if
out.
they don't
We'll
want to
find
give
out
their
what we
names,
can
and they
do.
don't get the information.
Yeah, we'll
And
figure
we're
They're
going to be talking.
accessing private information, and they're doing it against what is established law.
And we're going to be talking about that in the afternoon.
So,
I
yeah.
know, I just want to see if this was my
Yeah.
person to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, well, I'm the interim administrator. There you go. You know, hey, I know people.
Okay, Tawana.
So, Dr. Dorfman, I like what you said about, you know, when we're looking at that structure, when we approached this back in, it was July, when we approached it back in July and started looking, because we went through another structure, I also, in that process, what I proposed, the structure of it, was also put a plan behind that so that we can have a better relationship with the clinics and help educate the patients better. And one of the things I did do was do the handbook. That was one step forward. I'm also looking at the phone system and I'm pulling reports on the calls and how many drops. So I am looking at those things. But things gotta take baby steps. That's what David's teaching me because I want to take it all together at the same time. He says take one piece at a time. So I am looking at the phone system because that could be the problem too, is how my staff is interacting and what's saying. And there may be training around that stuff. So that's like each person that's doing the phone. So those things are in the plan too. And a start of it is the clinic letter, what we just recently did. So, and the application form that's a part of this packet. So I'm gonna talk first, I was gonna talk about the travel claim, but since that was the part, I just wanna introduce this, introduce the clinic letter. So on the 11th of June, we sent out a letter to most of the clinics, the clinics that we know that we interact with, that send the patients, to assist the patients, with them trying to get their registry cards, because it is complicated sometimes. The patients don't understand our rules and statutes. You know, it's us on the end needing to communicate and help them. So we send out a letter to most of the clinics, and then we attach some of the complicated things that we would like for the clinics to try to help guide those patients. And there was a second page here that talked about our fees, but that's the biggest piece. And that's why a lot of times they're confused. They're either sending too much money or not enough money, or think they qualify for one thing and then they don't. And so we try to give a little cheat sheet to help the clinics better tell the patients or explain those things. And so that's a start in that. And so also a part of, and you can see the letter and some of the things. And if there's some clinics you guys know or some other way that you can reach out and get this information out to the community, it'll be helpful to share this with the community. The other thing we did was we're trying to find a way that can help the patients understand how to fill out the application, because that's where the big part is, that they call and they're confused, they'll come back and they miss one piece and we send them another letter and they say, well, I just gave that, and it goes back and forth. So we said maybe we need to have another look at our application and help make it easy for the patients to understand how much they need to send in. So you can see we redesigned our application, which we sent out to let you guys review. And then, but before we finalize it for your review, we also sent it into our communications. We have the public health communications, and so we had them review it. And prior to that, we didn't have the communications review, and so they helped us design this new application in hopes that it'll be easier for the patients to help them. So I would like the clinics to start using our new form and try to get rid of a lot of the old ones, as this will help. We have a fee worksheet, so that would help the patient. So that's a step that we move forward with looking at the community.
May I just comment briefly on that? I know we're time constrained. I applaud this. I think this is really good. I don't know if you probably have plans, but maybe post this in an open way on the website so that doctors coming in can find it. You might also link it to patients. Give this to your doctor so that patients finding it, and if they don't understand the French in it, they can bring it to the clinic. That'll distribute it. And also the other big point besides fees, I see patients getting hung up on are the deadlines. There's a 60, 90 day. If you can create a worksheet so the patient can kind of just figure out and not be blocked out of a non-refundable fee because they're too early filing.
Yes, absolutely.
So those I think are really big.
Just to alleviate a fear real quick, the fees are non-refundable, but if you were to be rejected because your APS was signed too early, you're not going to have to pay the application fee again when you reapply. It'll be applied to that. So it is a non-refundable fee in that sense, but if you end up getting rejected, that fee still carries over. I just want to be clear.
I appreciate that point taken. In my income bracket's not a problem, but for patients on $600, $700 a month, it's sometimes a big issue.
We just don't want to give the impression by saying non-refundable that if your application isn't approved, you're going to have to pay again to reapply. Well, you can apply that money to the subsequent application.
Tawana, can you tell me why we have that 60, 90-day thing? Why can't it just be 90 days?
I'm not sure what this.
You can turn in 60 days before you expire, but the doctors assign 90 days before you expire.
Oh, they're not associated together.
So you have to hold, you can have your doctor's signature, you have to hold it for 30 days to get it in. And some people come through too soon, and that could be causing some jam up in your practice, but I don't understand why they would be different to start with. Why couldn't it be 90-90?
We have to revisit this in our staff meetings. I agree. I don't know where the 60-day issue is, so we'll find out, because that paperwork is acceptable. I mean, we might encourage a person not to apply 3 months early, because now you have a valid card and a card that, then it gets weird.
Yes.
But that certainly isn't any rule.
I don't remember that rule from before. It's kind of more recent.
That's why I'm asking about 60 days. That's something that I'm unfamiliar with, so I'll look into that.
Okay, Sarah and Ben, how much more do you have?
I'm just going to go over the travel.
Okay, all right, Sarah and Ben.
Very quick. Would you also be amending the change request form and also the renewal forms that you guys send out from the office?
Yes, I don't like those new renewals, how it got set in the database, and we're going to work on that. It's still a part of our maintenance of the new database system. And I started seeing that because it was supposed to be designed to make the data entry faster, so that we would, but it's hard to read, and we're going to remove the APS out of there. That's already going to happen, because I don't think the attending physician statement should be a part of that renewal piece. It's pushing it out of our new database system. We're trying to make it streamlined, and I finally reviewed and seeing it. So that's going to change, but that may not change immediately because of we have to deal with this time. But the change form is in I meant to speak to that. The change form is in the process of being reviewed by the Public Health Communications Department right now. So you guys will soon see the first draft of that for your review before we finalize it. So we needed to do one at a time. Okay.
All right, Ben, last question.
Yeah, I'll make it very quick. I'll segue, the perfect segue into it. As a request, just further request, if you can give a little more timeline for us to review it. By the time
one day.
One day wasn't enough time for me to review and make appropriate edits. You don't have the email, so it'd be okay if you give us like a week. I'd greatly appreciate it for time. Thank you.
I have one question.
There's too many timelines.
That's really quick.
Juana, you also sent out a letter to the clinics telling them about the handbooks, and you did mention that when we got one and saying we could order.
And we put the handbook in there. Yes, thank you.
That was very helpful.
Oh, thank you. I forgot about that part. So we're getting there.
All right, Charlie. travel reimbursement.
Oh, travel reimbursement. So, let me see if I have the right thing. So you have in your packet, I put the instructions in front of the travel reimbursement claim form, and it's been updated. So, could you send it out to me?
I had some troubles getting the electronic copies to work for both Alice and
Oh,
Dr.
really?
Orphan,
Okay.
So we're working on that.
So you should soon see the electronic version. It's an Excel version of the travel form. It's in here as an example. But also the instructions are here on how to fill it out, and I think that would help you guys a little bit better knowing how to complete that form.
Okay.
And it is easier when you do it electronically because it calculates everything for you, so you don't have to worry about those totals. And also, it tells you how much you get paid for overnight stay from what time you leave, and that's why it's important to put the date. Sometimes you guys see me and call back needing to know when you left. So that's on here too, so you can break it down from when you left your home and how much you get of the cost. But what I haven't been doing is giving you all the per diem up front. So I will make sure that every meeting from now on, I'll make sure I tell you what that per diem rate is, so when you don't have to call me later and ask for it and have it up front, so you can complete the form timely. But for here, so for the lodging is $77 for the per diem. If you stay you can ask for the government's rate, and they should honor that. If you have problems for like Dr. Cohn, I used to write him a letter so that he can get that rate. He ran into some trouble sometimes. But if you exceed that rate, it comes out of your pocket. The meal, and also you need to provide a receipt. You have to provide a receipt for your lodging. For the meals, it's $46 per day, and I'm speaking Medford. So everywhere we go is different. Like everywhere we go. So $46 per day. And it's calculated based on what time you left as far as whether you get this much for meals, lunch, and dinner. So usually the dinner piece is half, and the meal and the lunch is a quarter. So, and if you put that information in the system using electronic, hopefully we can get that to you so that you can have the electronic version. But the mileage went up to 0.565 now. It was 0.555, now it's 0.565 for the mileage. Any clarifying questions in regards to that?
I would just add, this, basically committee members on this committee under statute are eligible for state per diem rates. Just flat out state rates. And it's the same thing. Yeah, say I got my receipt so I can do my form. So, you know, we fill out the same one. Mm-hmm. And it's just, everything's very automatic. So, you know, just, I would just encourage you, yeah, fill it out as you go. And actually, the state rate covers, it's the same for virtually the entire state. So the exceptions are like Central Oregon, this is one, I think, and on the coast or something. But for the most part, you know, you'll see the same numbers over and over again. So it's not like
I think Portland is an exception too. When you say Portland's higher than here.
Will you be sending out electronic copies to us?
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
Aaron had trouble getting it out yesterday, so
Okay.
we'll try to work on that and make sure we guys get it. Because I'd rather you have that than me having to cross out and change everything, and then I'm having to add it up in my head.
Good, so we just need to set the meeting date. Does everyone have an idea? Amanda Ryman's interested in coming to speak to us, and her only available date in September is the 6th, is Friday the 6th. Are you still off on Fridays, Tawana?
No, I'm not.
So, will that
Matter of
work?
fact, my office hours changed. I work 8 to 5 now.
Wow.
So we can, so I be here for
7 days a week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do actually, on weekends sometimes too, and I go home and just.
6 works for me.
Cause it's only me, and it's like now I tell my staff, I put on my board when I'm open, because otherwise it's like every second. I'm like, stop. So, yeah.
I don't have a problem with September 6th. Where's the meeting going to be? Portland?
Portland, looks like,
Portland?
yeah.
The next meeting is
I can't be there.
September, yeah, that's Portland.
Yeah.
Portland,
I
and,
have a conflict, clinic conflict. This is an aside, but there's a way to do meetings that you can do on, called Doodle, which I'm just discovering, where you propose a bunch of times and you get the input and you get everyone responding and have a graph and pick the best time for everyone. I don't know if that'll help you.
We actually use that.
Okay, we
Yeah.
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 Okay.
so what week or, so we're gonna,
Well, Dr. Dorfman has a conflict on the 6th. And Brian too, okay.
on the 6th?
On the 6th, yeah.
Okay.
But it's not urgent to have Amanda here. She could probably come in December, probably too, with advance notice, so. Any other proposed dates?
I'm open totally.
Fridays are good for me, for Monday.
I'm pretty open.
Aaron's off on Fridays, that's why
Aaron's off on Fridays.
he doesn't mind working. He changed his schedule this week for, for this.
Yeah, there's the International Cannabis Conference on the 26th and 28th. If anyone's going there. Anybody want to throw something out? So is a Monday better for Aaron? And
Don't make this about me. I don't mind.
No, it's your guys' meeting, you set what's best for you guys, and we'll work
Monday
around
the
it.
16th is great for me.
It's great for you?
Because I have a trial down here on the 17th.
Well, we're in Portland.
Oh, it's not so good for me.
Okay.
Oh, I have a section.
So Mondays usually stink for you, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I could do it Monday the 9th because I have a phone conflict. Yeah. I could do Monday the 9th.
Ninth is okay for me.
Yeah. Good for me.
Labor Day is on
Labor Day is the 2nd.
All right.
Second, yeah, September 2nd is like.
And Portland.
Okay, well,
Good.
without further delay, we'll bring our invited speaker here who came so far to give us a glimpse into the potential future of what we can see here in Oregon. Oregon's been leading the way up until recently. So without further ado, I'll invite Michael Sotman to
Where do you want me to?
wherever you feel comfortable. You can use the microphone, or you can, wherever you feel
Sure.
comfortable.
Would it be, I would like to have kind of a discussion with you folks rather than just lecture you or do the PowerPoint. And would it be possible for us to kind of sit around in a circle and move, maybe take a break for 5 minutes and just have a seat and have that kind of configuration rather than me facing you or facing you or?
Why don't you just pull that chair right over?
Yeah.
Would that work?
Right here.
Okay, great. I just want to be able to look at everybody rather than having somebody at the back. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'd like to tell you about my personal history along with my work in this field because they're drawn closely together because I am a patient myself, and that's what kind of is my motivation and inspiration for getting involved in medical cannabis. My background, I went to school at UC Berkeley and studied poli-sci there and international administration. And my background was initially was working in international aid development programs for non-governmental organizations around the world. I worked in Asia, spent 10 years working in China and Tibet and India, and was basically doing world development and supply chain solutions with a focus on natural product production. So, grab my water here. Sorry. So, in 1996, I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. Don't know how I got hepatitis C. Never been an IV drug user, but did have some surgeries when I was a child. I was born in the 50s, so of course hepatitis wasn't screened in those days, and I think that was probably the vector that got me. But in '96, I did find out that I had hepatitis, and of course that was the year that California passed Proposition 215. We got a medical marijuana law there, And I entered treatment when the first treatment was available. In fact, I was at the VA center doing a clinical trial on what's called pegylated interferon. I'm sure the doctor is familiar with that. That replaced the standard interferon, which is a very difficult drug to take. And so compliance with that treatment is difficult for many patients. It wrecks your appetite, you can't sleep, it makes you irritable. There's all kinds of effects to it. So I found that cannabis was very, very helpful to mitigate some of those side effects. But what I wasn't happy about, of course, I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in Los Angeles and went to school in Berkeley. So, marijuana was something familiar to me. Always had access to it and certainly used it recreationally now and then. But, at that point I needed it for medical treatment. And I was so sick during, the treatment itself, I could not grow for myself. And of course, dispensaries really were just kind of coming together at that point. And so I had a lot of difficulty finding medicine, that really kind of met what I felt I required because my immune system was compromised due to the treatment. So, after 48 weeks of treatment, the first time I went around, unfortunately it failed. And so I just kind of let go of that. But, I did find during that time that really I could not have completed that treatment, I think, if I didn't have access to medical cannabis. Then in 2004, I was treated again. A second drug came along called ribavirin. Again, this is an antiviral drug. Interferon was used for chemotherapy for leukemia. And so then there was this dual combo treatment. And in 2004, I was put on that. Went ahead, after 50 weeks, I had cleared the virus. And I thought I was on track for a cure. And again, I relied upon using medical cannabis to get me through that regimen, which, with the addition of the second drug, it was even more difficult. The burden in terms of the side effects were just Guantanamo level, really. And, unfortunately, at week 50, they wanted to extend me to 72 weeks of treatment, like a year and a half using chemotherapy drugs and antivirals and that. And at week 50, unfortunately, my immune system collapsed. And, I was consuming cannabis both inhaled and as an edible. And I, unfortunately, developed an E. coli infection. Actually, I developed epididymitis, and I'm sure the doctor will tell you how difficult that can be. And I was rushed to the hospital, put on morphine, and, my GI doc came in and said, sorry, you've relapsed, right? And I don't know where I got the E. coli infection from, but it could have possibly been from the cannabis that I was consuming. Because, of course, even though at that time dispensaries had arisen in California, there still wasn't a lot of testing going on. And, of course, when patients produce medicine, God bless them for doing it under the circumstances, that we face here. Sometimes it's very difficult to achieve the quality standards that one might expect for people who have immune systems that are compromised. A quality level that's really required. So my background was really as an internationalist. I was involved in natural product production. So I decided to do a meta-analysis of who out there in the world really understood how to produce medical cannabis with the quality and the safety standards that people in my particular situation absolutely needed. So, I started out at the World Health Organization in Geneva. In WHO, there's an office there called the Office of Controlled Medicines. And that's run by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Willem Schulten. And Willem was the first director of the Office of Medicinal Cannabis of the Dutch Ministry of Health. And so when I went to see him in Geneva, we had a long discussion about medical cannabis and how he started up the program there. And I just want to start off by telling you, I'm going to go through a few different jurisdictions around the world. Maybe start with the Netherlands and talk a little bit about Israel and Canada, and then end up maybe in Washington State, where I've recently been working with a company called Botec. Botec is a consultancy organization. They do policy analysis. And they were recently hired by the Washington State Liquor Control Board to basically advise on the new I-502 legalization bill that passed there last November. And I think all of these different frameworks I'd like to talk about for a few minutes, just to give the folks here and the commission and other officials here some idea on what's happening in these other systems, a little bit about their histories and the pluses and minuses and in terms of how things might roll forward here in Oregon. But if I can back up a little bit to the Netherlands, what happened there was about 12, 13 years ago, the Ministry of Health was a physician. Her husband had cancer. And as everyone knows, there are coffee shops in the Netherlands. So her husband was going out to the coffee shops to buy cannabis to mitigate the treatment of chemotherapy. And she said, hey, what the heck, I'm the Minister of Health. And my husband has to go to these coffee shops. So why don't we stand up a program to actually produce cannabis, medical cannabis for patients, under the same kind of guidelines that we would enforce for other medicines, whether they be botanical medicines or pharmaceuticals, single molecule medicines. So that was really how the Office of Medicinal Cannabis was first formed. Of course, that office is mandated by the Single Convention in 1961. There has to be a national cannabis agency, to administer that kind of program by international treaty. So the OMC proceeded, they were funded, and they proceeded to set up a program. They put out an RFP for 2 producers, and 2 companies were hired, were contracted with. One company was called SIM, run by a gentleman by the name of James Burton, an American who'd been living in the Netherlands for a long time. Have you met James? Yeah, nice guy. And the other company is called Bedrican BV. SIM, their production methodology was around greenhouses, and Bedrican's production technology was totally indoors. Right? So of course, in that contract, there are certain specifications, that the ministry was imposing in terms of the chemical profile of the ultimate products. And I might say that under the Single Convention, the government regulator has to be the wholesale distributor, right? And of course, they in the Netherlands have a pharmacy system there. Medical cannabis is distributed through pharmacies. So the idea being that you have a contracted producer, the producer supplies that to the Office of Medicinal Cannabis, and then they supply that to the pharmacy system. Of course, this is a nationally licensed program. So there's no conflict with any other law or federal law or anything like that. Cannabis in the Netherlands is provided by ordinary prescription. Any physician can prescribe it. It's not a complex named patient type system that they have in other places, which are kind of analogous to what's called special access programs. So it's a very kind of normalized and conventionalized system. The production of Bedrican is not that large, only about 150 kilograms a year. The reason why it's so small is that they have competition from the coffee shops. It's certainly easier to walk out your door, turn the corner, and go into one of the coffee shops and buy what you need, than let's say go to a doctor and then go to a pharmacy, and also maybe even pay a little bit more, 1 or 2 euros per gram more. So although the number of patients has grown over the years in the Netherlands, it still remains relatively small, simply because of the ubiquitous availability of cannabis in many cities throughout the Netherlands. All that is changing to a certain extent because there has been a change in government and a change of policy in the Netherlands regarding cannabis, in an attempt to close coffee shops there, restrict foreigners from accessing them. But after my visit to WHO in Geneva, I was then sent to The Hague to meet with folks at the OMC, and they sent me on to meet with folks in Bedrican, who have a manufacturing facility up in the northern part of the Netherlands. These are just 2 guys who run a very, very excellent production facility. They were kind of simple Frisian farmers, if you will, who had expertise in producing vegetables. They specialized in endive and white asparagus, and then later on they started producing cannabis seed, which was legal, for them to produce at that time. and it's still legal in terms of the sale of cannabis seeds throughout Europe. It's not controlled by the single convention. So they were contracted, by the Dutch government. Unfortunately, SIM, the other organization that was contracted, lost their contract because they could not meet the technical specification. After several batches, delivering several batches, there was a chemical profile requirement, because this is under pharmaceutical guidelines, essentially, that the chemical content under the label could only be plus or minus 15%. So due to the variability within the greenhouse situation as opposed to a fully controlled environment, they were unable to meet that spec and lost the contract, and essentially left Bedrocan as the sole producer of medical cannabis for the state. Well, I got on really well with the guys there in the Netherlands, and one of their colleagues by the name of Dr. Arno Haaskamp, who worked at Leiden University, some of you might have heard of him. He's probably the most renowned phytochemist concerning cannabis in the world, really. He and I had a continuing dialogue for a couple of years, and of course, when President Obama seemed like he was going to get elected, our discussions intensified to a great deal in 2008. And so we decided in 2009 to form a joint venture. And that joint venture was called Bedrocan International. And the purpose of that joint venture was essentially to project Bedrocan's technology and to seek licenses from national governments in other jurisdictions. So while Bedrocan BV in the Netherlands, they handled the EU, all those jurisdictions within the EU, I was kind of given the rest of the world to go out into the rest of the world and try to work with governments on the national level to either create or reform or restructure their existing programs to allow Bedrocan to produce medical cannabis under the same type of guidelines, right, that they do in the Netherlands. Bedrocan produces 4 strains of medical cannabis right now. One is 19% THC, the other one is 12% THC with less than 1% CBD. They have a new indica strain out now that's 14% THC, again less than 1% CBD. And they also have a very interesting strain called Bediol. It's 7.5% CBD and 6% THC. So that's kind of analogous, to Sativex's 1-to-1 ratio, of THC and CBD. And I've had the opportunity to try it once, and I'll say it's a very different animal, if you will, in terms of its effects and that. So, those different products are kind of, archetypical in terms of categories of cannabis. Naturally, there are maybe 700 varieties of cannabis out there, but we can kind of narrow them down to maybe 15 to 20 chemical profiles in a general sense. So that's the system that's taken place in the Netherlands, one that's been very successful, one that will go on, and one that's very appropriate for patients in that country and possibly for other countries as well. During the course of my work with Bedrocan International, the first area of my focus actually was Israel. Israel has had a medical cannabis program for over a decade as well. Started out again as a compassionate exception type program. There's a company in Israel called Tikkun Olam, a nonprofit organization. They started out in Israel with only about less than 100 patients, I think 30 initially, right? And so the idea was to produce cannabis for them for free, all right? And without any transactional element to it whatsoever. So that, Tikkun Olam literally means changing the world. So there was a very strong altruistic intention, and that program was very small for many, many years. Administered by one physician, Dr. Yehuda Baruch, who was a psychiatrist and director of the Department of Psychiatry in the hospital there. And it was kept as a very small program out of intention. Well, as we know, what starts as a small program
often explodes from a few hundred patients to many, many thousands. And of course, Tifamolum could not continue providing this as it went from a few hundred to a few thousand patients, and across 5,000 patients. They really didn't have the financial means, to continue to supply this for free. And so the Israeli government allowed them to start charging, but with a price control, a supply of 30 grams a month for less than about $100, right? So a fairly reasonable fee for that, but still not the kind of price that we might have to pay here in the U.S., and not a price that allowed for any kind of profit or expansion of their work. And that's pretty much where it stands right now. There are about 30,000 patients in Israel. And of course, my visit and my work in Israel really concerned working with the Knesset, with their parliament, to try to restructure the system there. They were not in alignment with a single convention. They had no national cannabis agency. So it was really out of compliance, really, with their treaty obligations. And we knew that the International Narcotics Control Board in Vienna was taking a close look at them. Plus the fact there was no regulatory standards imposed on the producers in terms of quality control on that, because this all started out as kind of a compassionate, non-transactional system. And because of various factions and political controversies, kind of hard all of a sudden to impose those kinds of standards, because there was fear of disruption of the supply chain. In other words, if you really impose too tight of a technical standard, maybe that these folks won't be able to achieve it. I mean, I just mentioned what happened to SIM, which is a very capable organization, right? So the idea was, well, we need to get this medicine to keep it flowing, just like in any practice of controlled substance management. The idea is you cannot supply controlled substances to people and then all of a sudden cut them off, right, and put them in a desperate situation. So the ministry there was in a bit of a dilemma. How do they keep product flowing to patients? How do they keep the producers in business? How do they prevent diversion at the same time? Because there was the 8 producers there, and frankly, there was a lot of diversion taking place out the back door. Because out of desperation, just to keep the lights on, and of course the law enforcement authorities knew about that diversion. They all wanted to come in and raid and shut down all of the producers. Members of parliament kind of kept them at bay and are still keeping them at bay to a great extent. So a very, very big dilemma, to how do we bring that kind of compassionate model forward, right? And make it commercially viable, be able to have the people involved in the system pay their rent, pay their bills, and have a life as professionals in that pursuit. That still has not been resolved in Israel and is still a problem. Although 2 months ago, the health ministry has said, yeah, we now have to kind of get it in gear here. We are going to impose regulatory standards on producers. They will have to be testing of all products, labeling of all products. In other words, we're going to go with the conventional, traditional approach as to what a health ministry does as a regulatory body. So there's a new landscape happening there, and we don't know how it's going to turn out in Israel, but the people there are very, very dedicated, very, very passionate as well. And I encourage any of you, I think Wayne, the other day you mentioned Dr. Shackelford, who you saw at the conference in Oakland there, talk about his work and how amenable the health ministry is to doing clinical research in Israel. And that's very much the case. So it is a really exciting and very open jurisdiction for people involved in the science of cannabis to make some progress there. The other country that I visited and worked in quite a bit was Canada. Of course, Canada was one of the first countries in the world to implement a medical cannabis system. And that system in Canada was really imposed due to court cases that went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. Unlike here in the U.S., the Supreme Court of Canada accepted the argument of medical necessity. And essentially they were prepared to strike down all cannabis laws based on the argument that you cannot deny patients who are suffering and in need access to cannabis. So in other words, if you don't put up a system to meet that need, then we as the Supreme Court are just going to invalidate all cannabis law. And so the government kind of reacted to that and got it in gear because they knew there was no alternative. So Health Canada, which is the Ministry of Health, that's what they're called, Health Canada, went ahead and stood up a system that would supply cannabis to patients through more or less the same system that was executed in the Netherlands. In other words, Health Canada established a national cannabis agency within the health ministry, and that agency then contracted, they put out an RFP, and contracted, with one organization, one company called Prairie Plant Systems. They were at first based in Manitoba, and they had their production facility in the bottom of a mine shaft, very deep underground, right? And it was put there, I think, really as a novelty in a sense. I mean, it was seemed to be kind of a secure area, you know, in the sense it's hard to get to if you're down a mine shaft. But of course, you know, all kinds of problems result when you try to cultivate something in an enclosed space in a mine shaft in terms of quality control. But they managed to move on with it, and they were able to produce product and supply Health Canada. And so there, in Canada, there's three methods that you could obtain cannabis. You could produce it yourself under what's called a patient production license. You could designate someone to produce it for you as a designated grower's license. Initially, that license only allowed you to produce for one patient, right? That's it. So that's not really a high kind of economy of scale, right? Again, that went back up to the courts. The courts said, hey, you can't do that, one patient, you know, that doesn't create a viable supply chain. So Health Canada said, okay, we'll fix it. We'll change it to 2 patients. Because, you know, Health Canada was a reluctant player here. It's not like they came forward with any kind of mandate themselves, you know, from their side to do this, but they only wanted to do whatever they were required to do by court order and nothing more, because generally the government had a very anti-cannabis policy in terms of the non-medical use of cannabis. So they didn't want to let it out of the box in that sense. And the program was very, very small in Canada for many, many years. The problem was that, you know, the source of the genetics that Prairie Plant Systems was given access to really came from seized seeds from the RCMP. So, you know, given that PPS had no real experience in cannabis themselves, they really didn't know how to go through the process of determining what types of land races, what types of genetics were the most efficacious. And furthermore, they were being contracted to produce only one variety, right? And not only that, but they were told not to supply that as whole flowers, but to supply that in a milled form, right? Ground up, you know, in a sense. So initially, the product that they supplied was swag. You know, I mean, it was, you know, yes, it had initially 8% THC. It was brought up to 12% THC. It was a blend. It had, you know, it was NIDA grade, if you will. It had seeds and stems and you know, looked awful and not have any kind of bag appeal, if you will. And of course, people were very, very unhappy with it. It was being subsidized, though, at $5 a gram. Right? And it was interesting, if you look at the contracts and how the money was allotted for the production, it was really only about $500 a kilo was paid for the actual material itself. All of the rest of the money, which amounted to several $1,000s a kilo, was all on reporting, all on generating reports to Health Canada on the whole production process. So instead of applying those investments to create a high-quality product, right, they really applied their investment for administrative control, in a sense. So that being said, only about, well, less than 20% of the patient population ordered cannabis from Prairie Plant Systems. The distribution chain was by courier, by registered mail, Of course, as you folks already know, there are compassion clubs up in Canada, analogous to dispensaries, and more or less providing the same services that dispensaries provide down in the United States here. So those dispensaries were not legal. They operated unlicensed and completely outside the law, but they were given, you know, depending upon what jurisdiction they're in, they were given the legal space to proceed, again, because local jurisdictions in often cases supported those dispensaries, those compassion clubs. So they were kind of given a gray area of space to operate within. And so you have a government system, a federally licensed government system running with a parallel, unlicensed, illegal system, really, that could be closed down or suppressed at any time. And so most patients, instead of ordering from Health Canada, which really wasn't meeting their needs, they really found their relief at these compassion clubs. But the other factor is, and this is a factor that affects every jurisdiction in which patients cultivate for themselves, local government, provincial and local government, has and had a lot of problems with patients cultivating on their own. For all the problems we see in terms of fire, in terms of other public safety, nuisance complaints, and it has always been a continual conflict between Health Canada trying to stand up their program, making it effective through a commercial supply chain, and running a parallel supply chain produced by patients that was essentially unregulated. All right? And then there was a huge problem in the perception of the regulators in terms of diversion. Case after case of producers, that is patient producers, essentially being rated by RCMP for growing too many plants or diverting their production into non-medical use. And so the story is the same. The point I need to make here is that whether it's Israel, Canada, the Netherlands, the essential problems and conflicts and controversies are the same all over the world. Right? I hope we can draw some lessons, from what has taken place in these other jurisdictions to learn how to go forward here in Oregon to achieve the best outcome for both the patients and for the other stakeholders who are involved in this issue. So I want to tell you recently, last week, Health Canada has come out with a complete revamp of their entire system. It's really a sea change that everyone should be very well aware of here in the United States, and I don't think there is a lot of awareness about it. But after a 2-year period of consultation, and Health Canada really did make a very, very good effort in meeting with every stakeholder in the country, from law enforcement to the patients to the compassion clubs to the physicians, pharmacists, nurses, naturopaths. I mean, every stakeholder was consulted on this, and I was part of that consultation as well. And so after 2 years, they have now just recently promulgated through the Canada, the Gazette, which is like our federal register, these new rules. And I encourage everyone to have a look at them online, because it gives an outline of a completely different framework here. And that framework, I might say, is slightly outside of the single convention. In other words, they are breaking their international treaty obligations which is amazing on one level, because of course, reluctant jurisdictions and national governments always kind of rely on the international treaties as the reason why they can't reform things, right? In any case, the new system that is arising in Canada is the idea of treating cannabis like any other medicine. And by that, they mean that they are going to license commercial producers to compete competitively amongst themselves, right? With Health Canada only playing the role of overseeing the standards imposed on those producers. In other words, Health Canada, the health ministry, won't be the intermediary anymore. They won't be, the prescriptions, and these are prescriptions, these are not recommendations, right? So, of course, up until this time, there was a 30-page form to get on the registry, and 2 categories of patients. Category 1 patients were named indications like cancer, HIV, etc., the ones we all know about. where you only need one physician to sign off. The second category, you might say those less onerous indications, you need a specialist, you need 2 doctors. There's a little difference up in Canada in terms of how the medical community views their position. The medical community in Canada really has a problem with being seen as the quote-unquote gatekeeper, right? With Health Canada in the mix, Health Canada was really the point of liability. After all, they were supplying the product, they were approving the prescriptions, they were funding the whole program, right? They were really the central hub of the wheel, right? So this new program, basically Health Canada wants and has washed its hands of the whole thing. They were tired of being sued. They were tired of going to the Supreme Court. They lost 8 lawsuits up to the Supreme Court level. And not only that, but their last contract for PPS was $17 million, right? And of course, from their perspective, they're subsidizing the whole system there. They would prefer that it came under, their health insurance, but as, the fact, because this is the system, it is national medicine program there, socialized medicine or whatever you want to call it, depending on your perspective. But they would prefer, but of course, without it being an approved drug product, they can't bring it in under the same insurance plans, provincial insurance plans that they have for all other medicines. But nevertheless, they wanted to treat it as an ordinary medicine, and at the same time back themselves out of all this political grief and harassment they get from activists and in the courts, and also in terms of their financial burden and administrative burden, because now, again, the patient population up in Canada is more than 30,000 patients. They project that it will go to 400,000 patients under this new system. Right? So, yeah. So it makes it much easier for them not to keep the registry, but just to manage it as they would manage any other type of controlled substance. All right. So the effect on patients. Right? The effect on patients is that they project that the price will go higher. Instead of that $5 a gram, their fiscal impact study shows it might go up to $8.50 or $9 a gram. I kind of doubt that because, again, there's no space within the new system for compassion clubs. They decided not to bring them in that tent for whatever reason, right? So again, the supply chain will still rely on couriers, on the Canada Post or private courier to deliver product to patients. There will be an unlimited number of strains or varieties. There will be no specified indications, right? That's a big change. Right? So there will be some drawbacks in terms of the compassion clubs falling outside the tent. Also, the personal production licenses and designated producer licenses will be withdrawn. Right? So that is the detriment to the patient community, right? And there will be some pushback, right? But of course, within any country and any jurisdiction, there are various stakeholders, and those patients who produce for themselves are just one set of stakeholders. The compassion clubs are one set of stakeholders. So both patients and compassion clubs will have to fight for those rights. And of course, I totally disagree with those 2 elements, right? But nevertheless, I support the other side of these new reforms in Canada because they will allow qualified companies to be formed, to get licensed, and to have standards imposed on them that any company would have imposed on them if they were producing a medicine for public distribution, right? So I think that's a good thing. I mean, I say that from the perspective of someone who needed that kind of quality control and whose health was jeopardized if that quality control wasn't there. There are folks, of course, that don't need that, and who I respect and invite to find any other relief in any other manner that's appropriate. And I think that what's happening in Canada in one way is a challenge to patients, but in another way is a great opportunity, not only to patients, but to the science community as well. Because to move back to the US for a little bit, and of course I've been involved a little bit with MAPS and their effort with Professor Craker and with Rick Doblin in terms of their protocols with FDA. I've been a reviewer of their PTSD protocol rather. We know the obstacles that they faced in moving forward. You know, how do you obtain research-grade material, right, to actually conduct valid clinical and preclinical research? There's only one source in this country, and that's NIDA, right? And as we know, material that you get from NIDA cannot be taken through the drug development process. That material, number one, is bunk, right? So it's not something that patients would want to purchase, even if it was approved through drug development. Number two, the US government owns the rights to it, right? So they own that lock, stock, and barrel. Everything that Professor El Sole does at the University of Mississippi is owned by the federal government. And of course, the purpose of NIDA is not to demonstrate the efficacy of cannabis. It's to demonstrate its detriment, right? There's no joy, you know, in trying to bring that through the drug development process. God bless Rick Doblin and MAPS. We're trying to do it. But of course, they also had an agenda beyond that as well in terms of, you know, pushing back on the DEA, if you will. So what's happening up in Canada will allow these new producers that will be established there to actually produce cannabis that will be research qualified, right? So the monopoly, what I'm saying is up ahead in the future in Canada, within a few years, we are going to have multiple sources of research-grade cannabis outside of NIDA. And there's only one other, I mean, there's really only two other sources in the world of research-grade cannabis, PES material, which Health Canada directly told me they don't want to put through the drug development process, and Bedrocan's material, all right? And Bedrocan does not have the funding capabilities to bring that through the drug development process, nor do they have the interest in doing so. So I think that when we look to what's happening in Canada with respect to the future of medicinal cannabis, I'm really optimistic and very hopeful that what's happening up there is going to have a huge impact on what's happening down here. Because as that system becomes effective in supplying products that patients want, that meets their needs, that has been tested and controlled in its quality, and does meet the objections. You know, when I came up here, the first time I came up here to Oregon on this issue was in 2009. And I came with my Dutch colleagues to give a presentation up here. I think it was Representative Ron Maurer at that time, had a bill in process to establish a state-controlled or a state-owned cannabis production facility. Well, you know, of course, we knew that wasn't really on in terms of, you know, the feds would never allow that. But of course, it was very interesting kind of possibility to talk about, and gave us an opportunity to come up and meet with legislators in Salem. And that was the year, I think, that cannabis was rescheduled here in Oregon from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. And I think that our presentation helped that in the sense of pointing out to legislators that yes, this can be done in a conventional manner, right? Under a regulatory body, under a system of manufacturing and controls that you all can live with. Because, you know, the prohibitionist lawmakers and folks from law enforcement, you know, the question always comes up, if this was medicine, why doesn't it go through the drug development process and drug approval process like any other medicine, right? And of course, you know, in other words, you know, the dose can't be controlled, it can't be standardized, you know, it's an herb, you know, it's just completely outside of what we know how to do and what we can accept. And plus, you smoke it, right? And that can never be an acceptable delivery method, right? Well, you know, I think, you know, by coming up here and staying on the science, not talking about the slippery slope, but always going back to the science of cannabis and the needs of the patients within that scientific context, we can posit a very strong argument as to why cannabis can be a conventional medicine that needs to be reincorporated back into the pharmacopoeia. And the opportunity in Canada that's coming up, I think, will really further that objective. So our joint venture with Bedrocan was crushed by the Dutch government 2 years ago. There was an election, and the Christian Democratic Party came into power with a very strong anti-cannabis campaign. They started looking at the coffee shops. They wanted to declare cannabis that was 15% THC or higher as a hard drug, right? Preposterous, right? And eventually their attention turned to the medical cannabis program. Essentially, they told my colleagues, either you pull out of the United States and close up shop globally, right, or we'll cancel your contract. So, you know, this was Bedrocan's small company, you know, small number of people working there, but of course, they only had one customer. And when that one customer tells you, hey, we're going to cancel your contract, they had no other choice but to come to me. We met in Ottawa in late 2010. We came together in Ottawa to present what's called a pre-CTA application to Health Canada. We developed a drug trial in collaboration with Dr. Mark Ware from McGill University. Dr. Ware is the preeminent cannabis researcher. He's a pain specialist. I encourage you to look at some of his work. He's done studies on, recently completed a study on smoked cannabis for the control of pain. So we developed what's called a pre-CTA application. It's analogous to a pre-IND, investigative new drug application. An 80-page document that essentially elaborates the chemistry and manufacturing controls, the product itself, and then a protocol, in this case a phase 2 protocol on pain with most likely a focus on neuropathic pain. So in the process of filing that application, you're then invited to meet with regulators in Ottawa for a discussion of the protocol. So we all came from the Netherlands and from California, where I live, to Ottawa to meet with both the Clinical Trial Directorate and the Controlled Substance Division of Health Canada. You know, big conference room, 20 people in the room, and all, you know, all of the regulators, reviewers, controlled substance folks, licensing people, right? And so Dr. Ware gives his presentation on the science, and Arno on chemistry, etc., and the producers on the chemistry and manufacturing controls. And of course, I was CEO of the joint venture there. And when it came around to me, you know, I said, you know, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I have really just one question, you know, for the folks here from Health Canada. Is there any other agenda that we should know about besides the merit of our science? Is there any other thing you want to tell us, right, regarding how you're going to review this process, other than the merit of our protocol? And because, of course, the question I was asking is, do you have a covert agenda? Yeah. Right? In other words, are you going to let us, you know, dedicate our lives, spend our treasure, you know, use all of our time, and then really have the agenda to defeat us, right, to show that it couldn't work, right? And they really, very honestly, I totally believe them that they really wanted us to engage in this process, and they said, yes, of course, the Minister of Health can overrule anything we say or do, right, because we serve at the discretion of the Minister. But you can take it from our side that we want this protocol to move forward, and I made it very clear to those folks, this was not an exploratory protocol, right? This was not something to just get data to go onto a shelf to say this is one more, but this was drug development. And when you establish a drug development process, the regulatory bodies impose a much higher degree of analysis and oversight and review and data. The data burden becomes much, much greater. And we, of course, we welcome that because that's exactly what our intention was. So we came out of that meeting very excited essentially this was the first time, in my knowledge, that a government had approved cannabis, botanical cannabis, herbal cannabis, to go through the drug development process, because in Canada, the three elements were there, finally, were there. That is a standardized material, right? A single dose formulation that we had developed, right? 100 milligram single dose formulation, and an approved delivery device. Just before we submitted that protocol, Storz and Bickel got certified their Volcano into a new device called the Medic. It's not available here in the US, it's available every place else, right? But it's essentially the same device with a different valve on the balloon. It's a one-way valve. You can't blow into it. You can only exhale out of it, because they didn't want essentially, patients to blow in and contaminate what was in the balloon. So Storz and Bickel spent $300,000 to bring their Volcano device through the certification process in Germany and Canada to make it an approved medical device. And a lot of folks are completely unaware that there is an approved medical device for the delivery of botanical cannabis, right, in inhaled form. And so all three elements are available. Unfortunately, at that meeting, my colleagues from the Netherlands had to drop the bomb on me, right? That in spite of this victory that we've just had today, we're closed, right? And so that all went by the wayside. What happened for me personally was that another drug was developed for the treatment of hepatitis C. And I'll move, I haven't really got to the center of what I came here to talk about in terms of Washington, but I re-entered treatment again 2 years ago, and it was a triple drug combination. Now I went through a year of treatment again, and essentially I was cured of hepatitis C about a year ago. I'm now 1 year post-treatment and kind of certified as cured. Well, about 4 or 5 months ago, I was approached by a company called Botec. Botec is a company run by Dr. Mark Kleiman, who is based in UCLA. Dr. Kleiman is an expert on marijuana legalization. He's written a book on that subject. And so, as you know, there was an initiative passed in Washington that legalized cannabis for non-medical use, I-502. Out of that came an RFP for a consultancy that would advise the Washington State Liquor Control Board on how to best implement that law. And so the RFP really had 4 different categories to it. The product, the industry and the product, quality control and testing, consumption validation, and regulatory structure, right? And I was hired by Botec to run the first category on the product and the industry, that is how to manufacture, how to create a supply chain, right, for medicinal cannabis, for cannabis. And so we worked to develop, some data and some input on how that can be developed. And of course, our job was not to make recommendations, but just to present options. So in talking a little bit about Washington, I know our time is just about up here, but this is what we really have to look at now in terms of the future here in Oregon, because the legalization train is headed south, right? And as we know, Paul Stanford and others are going to support another initiative for legalization, and that's happening down in California as well. So in terms of Washington, where it's already taken place, we have to say, well, where does this new landscape leave the folks who work so hard and risk their lives and time to develop the medical cannabis system that now exists in Canada, in Washington? And it's very interesting because I've advocated very strongly, to keep these systems separate, right? That the new system should not subsume the existing system, because patients have different needs, than those folks who are looking to use cannabis for non-medical purposes. And problems have arisen in terms of the regulators accepting that perspective, mainly over the issue of taxation and diversion. because the two main issues in Washington are diversion into other states and access by youth, to cannabis, right? So those are the two main things that they feel the federal government is going to be most concerned about. And so the idea here was that if folks accessing medical cannabis were able to purchase cannabis at a lower price, then that creates a circumstance of diversion, right? Of possible diversion. So that's why they are now considering imposing taxes, additional taxes on medical cannabis to bring it up to the same price levels as non-medical cannabis. Let me just explain a little bit about the taxation system, because I find it onerous. There's 3 licenses that are going to be issued. These regulations will come out in September, right? They're just finishing the commentary period right now. So there's 3 types of licenses there: producers, processors, and retailers. They're using a straight-up alcohol model. After all, this is the Liquor Control Board, which is now being called the Liquor and Cannabis Board. They can keep the C in there, just replace control with cannabis, all right? So the idea is to have a 25% tax on producers, a 25% tax on processors, 25% tax on retailers, plus any other additional taxes a local government wants to impose, all right? That is, in my mind, a very, very heavy tax burden. And if you have to draw, the medical cannabis community up to that level of taxation on it, I think that will be a detriment to low-income patients, especially. That's the challenge. The opportunity is if there is not federal interference, the feds just don't come in and crush the whole thing through either federal injunction or through the types of punitive measures that are taking place in California and other states, sending letters of forfeiture and that. If it is allowed to proceed, it will also provide some space for people to exercise the types of quality control, not at the level that a health ministry might impose, but at, let's say, food grade standards, the same level of quality control that might be imposed on other producers of herbal medicines that fall into, the public domain. All right. So in terms of that liability and responsibility, for the quality of products, I think that will provide an opportunity for patients to get higher quality products, a greater variety of products, possibly through competition, lower prices. It depends upon the scale that producers are allowed to achieve there. There's a great conflict also between the Big Tent philosophy. Allison Holcomb from the ACLU, who was the sponsor of the measure, her position was everyone who wants a license to produce should get a license to produce. That's rather difficult for a regulatory body to manage because if you have thousands, there is an enforcement division, and these are officers of the law who have to enforce that. There's a limited number. There's only 30 officers right now associated with the board. If there's thousands of producers, how do they exercise oversight? On the other hand, there's big fear of big business, big pharma, big alcohol, whatever big, you want to think about, getting in there and kind of getting a headlock on the supply chain, right? So there has to be kind of a balance achieved between economies of scale and allowing those who want to be licensed not to have such a regulatory burden on them that they can't, in other words, through fees, for example, high fees, high regulatory standards, etc., onerous enforcement. That balance has not yet been achieved in terms of an understanding with all the various stakeholders. We don't know at this point how many licenses are going to be issued. It's my opinion that it will probably be not in the hundreds. It will probably be less than 100 eventually that will be issued there. There is, under the alcohol system in Washington, there's what's called a crafts distiller license up there. This allows people to distill 60,000 gallons or less. It's not a super large scale commercial license, but it's a craft level license. So I think that's probably the model that they're going to go under. There's 60 companies licensed under those craft distiller And that's something quite manageable in terms of size, right? So what's happening in Washington is still an unknown. We don't know how it's going to turn out. Again, we're not making recommendations. My work is finished in Washington right now. My focus now is going to be on other projects. But I'm very excited about what's happening in Washington and Colorado. And there's a whole new landscape, not only in those states, but in other countries as well. So I would just encourage the committee to put their head up into the world and look all around and try to gather as much information, not only from other jurisdictions here in the U.S., but from all these other countries. They're trying to make progress on this issue and make sense of it and to bring cannabis back into a position of normalcy within our society. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
If there's any questions, I know we're out of time. I'm happy to talk to anyone here.
Yeah. We'll officially adjourn for lunch and meet back at 1:05, 5 after 1. But yeah, you're welcome to informally sit around and ask questions with Michael. Thank you so much.
You want to say anything before I turn it off, Glenn?
Yes, good night.
Good night. God bless you all, every single one of you.